Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting, Tuesday, March 20th, 2007. Ms. Woman, would you open the meeting, please?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate noting of the holding of this regular meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on January 1, 2007. By the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News, and Star Ledger for publication on January 1, 2007. By the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on January 1, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room, to the rear, they are to your immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room at the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Roll call, Mrs. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker?
She called. She's running a little late.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mayor DeBella?
He'll be here momentarily.
Just walked in.
Okay, and I believe there is reason to go into executive session. So if you'd like, I'll read the executive session statement.
Yes, I would like that, please.
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall be excluded from any meeting of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. Whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and the Township Council will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and the circumstance under which a discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time. We need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
And I'll take a roll call.
Take a roll call?
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, close this portion of the meeting. We'll open back up at approximately 8 o'clock for the citizens.
7:30.
7:30? It'll be 8 o'clock, folks.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting to order. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is a continuation of the March 20th, 2007 meeting of the Howell Township governing body. Council's been in executive session since approximately 6:30, and we're going to begin the public portion of our meeting. We've read the appropriate statements. I'd ask that everyone please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would ask that everyone please remain standing just for a moment of silent observation in thought of the many troops that continue to defend this country all over the world. Thank you. Before we get back into our normal agenda, I'd like to ask the members of the council to come on up to the front of the room. We have a presentation that we're going to be making. Good evening, folks. This is one of the fun parts about these meetings and the fun parts about this job. We get to recognize people that do really special and extraordinary things in our community, and in many cases it winds up being young people, and that's really no surprise. And I'm going to embarrass the principal of Howell High School, Ms. Erberg, to come on up, if you wouldn't mind. For those that don't know, this is the principal of Howell High School. Howell High School is, we welcome you, Mr. Erberg, you need very little introduction. Howell High School continues to be really one of the finest places that you'd want to send your children to get an education. And I had the good pleasure of working with our principal many times, and there's really no finer educator at that level that I've ever been exposed to. And it goes without saying that her staff continues to do a wonderful job. And I came across an article in the newspaper about the high school's magazine that the young people in the school put together, and how they were rated the #1 magazine in the country by a peer group. And forgive me, I'm going to just read for a moment. Howell High School has their particular publication, and I believe it's called the Laureate. Did I get that right? Okay. I didn't want to pronounce it that much. And there is an association of the American Scholastic Press Association, and they examine various periodicals that are produced by schools across the country. And Howell High School's publication was judged really as the finest. The magazine actually scored on their point system a 940 out of 1,000. The magazine is judged on a point system on a whole number of categories. The students' work is judged on content, organization, design, presentation, and creativity. And in fact, in the letter that Howell High School received, the students that are involved in this program, that they received from the national judges, it said the Laureate is an excellent publication which deserves a first-place award in the American Scholastic Press Association's annual magazine competition. The magazine shows the efforts of talented and creative editors, writers, artists, photographers, layout designers, staff members, and advisors. And this is an association, a trade group, if you will, that critiques school yearbooks, newspapers, magazines based on school size, and provides suggestions on actually improving the publication. And it sounds like they had very little to suggest by way of improvement in the case of Howell High School. So we really felt this was something very extraordinary, the council and I, and it goes without saying that we need to do more recognition of young people in our community that do truly exceptional and very special things. So before we read some of these certificates, I don't know if you'd like to say anything, Ms. Herberg, about this wonderful award.
Well, I'd like to introduce my advisor for the laureate, Carla Lonsbury. Carla is also an English teacher at the high school and does an amazing job with all of our students. And I'm going to ask you, when you introduce your staff, if some of our students could also, those of you that are seniors, tell where you're going to school next year. Because I think that also is very
That would be
telling of
terrific.
their abilities.
Well, we have would you like to add anything that we may have missed in giving the right accolades?
No, thank you for your wonderful job. Thank you.
We have a presentation that we're going to present to all of the young people that were involved in the laureate, and it reads as follows. It says, on behalf of the Township Council and myself, we wish to congratulate you on your hard work and creative endeavors in making the laureate its extraordinary success that it is. To be named the best in the nation by the American Scholastic Press Association is a tremendous honor, and we commend all of you for it. It's presented this 20th day of March, signed by myself, Mayor Joseph M. DeBella, and has the seal of the Township, and it's presented certainly on behalf of myself, the Township Council, and really all the people of Howell, because you brought great recognition to the community. So we're going to call each one of you up and do. And if I mispronounce any of your names, I apologize. I'm pretty bad with names. Jenna Strauss. Emily Fisher.
Emily, you're a senior?
Oh, that's right. Whoever's a senior.
Emily is a senior. Emily will be attending the University of Pennsylvania next year. She got in early December.
Ashley Oziri.
Ashley, I'm fortunate for them.
We'll leave
She's
this with
actually
you.
doing EM tutoring.
Let's give her a round of applause.
Brett Siegel.
Everyone knows that Cornell is going to take Brett. That's
Kelly Fitzpatrick.
Is everybody St. Patrick's Day?
Yes. Yes. And Kelly is going to Loyola. Yes. Yes. Congratulations.
Anna Zitkulik. Carla Lounsbury. Really, on behalf of the entire community, we want to thank you for your efforts, great work, and good luck in all of your future endeavors, both this year and future years at Howell, and certainly in your academic endeavors going forward. Thank you all very much.
Come on, man.
Good luck. Thank you all.
That's great.
We'll just give everyone a quick second to file out. Okay, we're going to get back into our business agenda. Article 4 is acceptance of minutes. I'd ask a member of the council to please introduce a motion accepting the February 6, 13, and 20 workshop and executive and public participation meetings.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion. We need a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please, on the minutes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, reports of township officials. I believe we did have our one presentation, but it looks like you're ready for another one, Mr. Cherniaski?
Yes, sir.
All right, what do you have for us?
Well, this will be my manager's report.
Okay.
A couple of items, but first and foremost, I am pleased this evening to announce to the mayor, council, community, and staff that we have made a final selection in our search for a new Parks and Recreation director. The gentleman we have chosen is Brian Haltigan. He is the current Director of Recreation for Wall Township. Brian comes to us with a great deal of experience in both the public and private sectors. In terms of his educational background, he holds a bachelor's degree from Rutgers University in sports management and a master's in education and physical education from Springfield College in Massachusetts. While at Rutgers, incidentally, he was a Division I baseball player. His professional experience consists of working as the Assistant Director of Athletics at Pace University, Director of Marketing and Sales and Client Relations at Body Balance for Performance, which is a company that trains you specifically to be a good golfer. He's worked as a general manager at the New York Sports Club, and again, most recently, as the Recreation Coordinator for Wall Township. It's a pleasure for me to introduce to the community Mr. Brian Haltigan.
Okay, everyone. I'm very excited to be here in Howell Township, and I look forward to working, especially with Tom's and Helene and the rest of the community. Thank you. You got it.
Brian will start on April 9th. In the interim, I would just like to acknowledge the work and the effort put forth by the current, who's a coordinator in the department. He was raised to the level of assistant and then acting or interim director. His name is Stephen Fetcher. He's done an outstanding job for us for the past 8 months. With respect to the process, we received approximately 30 applicants. We had extensive interviews with 6 of those applicants, and we called 3 back. The final 3 also had an opportunity to meet with Ms. Michelle Flaherty, the chairperson of the Township's Recreation Advisory Committee, and I want to thank her. I understand she's here for the guidance and many hours that she helped us and the guidance she gave us in our selection. Thank you very much, Michelle. Okay, moving on to another item, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Mayor.
Brian, be careful on the way out. There's someone from one of the soccer groups. They probably already want to talk with you about field seating and the like. All right, good. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, incidentally, Brian was his competition got to learn about the job before we had a chance to inform them because coincidentally, the annual convention for the Parks and Recreation Association is happening now, and he traveled up from Atlantic City to meet the council and the community tonight. He was down there.
So we saved him some money, too.
There you go. I understand, Mayor, there's a number of residents from the list here about zoning issues, and I anticipate some questions just based on the calls that came into my office. I just want to remind the mayor and council how we're going about this. The planning board has recommended a number of zoning changes and as well as a number of new zones. Learning from our experiences over the past 6 months and trying to implement the master plan, which we have to do. In some form or another, there needs to be consistency between our zoning map and what the master plan calls for, whether it's on our part or on the planning board's part, we need to get there. The way we're doing it is we're creating the policies that create the zones as separate ordinances. So, for example, tonight we're introducing the HD3 ordinance, perhaps. So we're going to create these zones, and we're not necessarily going to assign those zones to areas on the map all at once, because that just, for the size of our community, that's just way too big of a nut to bite off at one time. So what we're doing, as you can see in the red, is we're moving from north to south in terms of taking the map that the planning board proposed and transferring it to our zoning map. And as the zones get adopted on future maps, we'll turn those into blue, and then we'll keep moving south with the ones that are proposed to change in red. The only other red one you'll see on this map has to do with the court settlement, which is down south further, and that's has to do with on Route 9. So that's how we're approaching it. And I just thought I'd get that information out for the time being. Finally, the police department asked me to report on one matter. There's been a few incidents in town where people pose as utility repair people or township employees and distract residents by asking them to see their utility boxes in the basement or what have you. And while their accomplice comes into the house and perhaps takes things from it. I just want to strongly remind the community that any employee of the township has a badge with our logo on it. It clearly identifies the individual as a township employee. And if you want more information on the police department's concerns, you can find that right on their website. Also, as the warm weather approaches, I want to point out to the community that with respect to mobile food vendors, they are required to have 4 licenses from the township. One from the health department indicating that the truck is clean and safe, a food handler's permit, a peddler's permit, and a police background check. If you suspect at any point that a vendor in your neighborhood does not have those licenses, please feel free to call the non-emergency police number or to log a complaint using the citizen request service, the Q Alert program that's now on our website. And then just in terms of ordinances, Mayor, we also have one on the add-on agenda for the ambulance, the bond for the ambulance acquisition.
Any
Thank you.
questions for Mr. Chinansky under his reports?
What ambulance is that?
For the Howell Rescue Squad, the one we discussed.
Health first aid? Okay.
Yes.
Anything else for Mr. Chinansky?
No, man.
Okay. Mr. Bongiovanni, anything under reports? Okay. No, sir. Okay. Ms. Dalton, would you like to start under reports? Any comments?
Yes, and I'll make it very brief because I see the crowd and I know we have very important matters to get to. I just wanted to say that I'm glad about the new rec director. I have been speaking and very interested in seeing some townwide fitness programs implemented, including some greater fitness activities at Howell Day, and also trying to implement perhaps the mayor's campaign for wellness sponsored by Aetna and I look forward to working with you to get that up and running. Okay. On Thursday, the deputy mayor and I had an opportunity to attend the execution of a new law by the governor implementing the Teen Driver Safety Study Commission. It was at Marlboro High School, and there were a whole bunch of people from various towns and county officials, et cetera. It was a great program, and we got to see the governor sign a bill into law to do some studies. I know that we had another accident, fortunately no fatality, involved here in Ramtown recently, involving a teen driver who was clearly not driving responsibly. And I think it's very important that we get back, that we emphasize that. So I thought it was a great thing that the governor signed, and we were glad to be a part of it. And it is my hope that programming to educate kids on that kind of issue may become part of Howell Township TV in the near future as we implement the education component of our public license.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howell, anything under reports?
Just real brief, Mayor. I see Sergeant Flaherty in the back over there. Some of you may have seen the article in the paper. Sergeant Flaherty had put himself into consideration for the nomination for the sheriff's position in Monmouth County. Sadly, for the people of Monmouth County, he wasn't chosen, but what's the county's loss is our gain. So I would like to thank Sergeant Flaherty for staying here in Howell Township. Second, Mayor, and I don't know if this is the right time or place, but I know the Board of Ed is presenting their budget shortly. I believe their meeting may be next week. If we could, with the council's approval, ask the manager possibly to reach out to the Board of Ed and see if they would consider having a meeting here or having some kind of an agreement where it could actually be broadcast on Channel 77, since they don't have the ability to do that on their own.
It's a great idea.
So.
Any objections to that?
Nope.
All right, Mr. Chansky, would you look into that, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, and because of the hour, Mayor, that's it for me.
Okay, terrific. Mr. Walsh, anything on reports?
I'll keep it short also, Mayor, because of the hour. It looks like we're going to have a busy night ahead of us. It was an honor last week to be at Marlboro High School with the governor while he signed that. I think it's becoming more and more evident to all of us that we must do as much as possible for the safety of our children. And been too many catastrophic events in the last 6 months that I think have opened up everybody's eyes that weren't open, that something does need to be done. And it was very nice to see a bipartisan effort. Had nothing to do with politics, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. Everybody was on the same page, working toward what's best for our children. And a lot of nice things were said. It was really a pleasure to see. Everyone was everyone had goals that we all have. Had nothing to do with politics, had to do with the youth of today. So I was glad to be there on Friday also. I had the privilege of going to our Homeland Security headquarters down in Ewing. And without releasing anything about it, I will tell you I feel much safer after being there. How our state is monitored and how they are looking after us from down in Trenton. Our state is on the cutting edge of trying to protect its citizens from the state. And I saw some things that really opened my eyes. I thought of Armageddon when they showed you Nassau. Okay? And I was very impressed. And I left there, even though it was a little bit stormy out on Friday afternoon when I drove home back to Howell Township. I felt safer nonetheless. God bless you all. And I was very happy tonight seeing the youth here from Howell Township. Not being one who took English that much, I guess I would say. Very appreciative that the youth of today have come as far as they have in Howell Township for them to have received such a prestigious award. Even though it was special for them, I think it's become a commonplace in our school system here. I'm very appreciative to be here with the school system we have and the education my children are getting. I just like to see it. I mean, it makes all the rest of the children strive for more and more. And these young children that were here today, you know, they're just models for the younger ones to go further and further. It was a pleasure to see them. I agree with the mayor that it's a good thing to recognize them more and more, because they are our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. The only comments I have, we've had a couple of run-ins with snow and ice. More recently, we had one, and I just want to commend our Public Works Director, the employees of the Department of Public Works. They've really done an outstanding job this season in combating this issue. So they've done a terrific job, and I know there's a whole new plan in place, and you can tell employees are really working hard, and we're very grateful for their help. Is there anything else under reports that we've missed? Okay. All right, we're going to get into a hearing of the citizens. We're going to go for 1 hour. As some folks may or may not be aware, more recently the council adopted a policy position to help ensure that we can accommodate as many people as possible at these hearings. So we have a 5-minute time parameter, if you will, for folks to come up and have their comments heard. We will give you sort of a heads up when we get to the 4-minute mark in the event you have additional comments you'd like to make, so that we can keep within the 5-minute time parameter and make certain that everyone will have an opportunity to be heard. In the event that the council doesn't engage with you or answer your question on the spot, it is not a function of disrespect. It's more of an acknowledgement that we're trying to get through as many people as we can, and you'll either independently be contacted by the manager or a member of the council. If it is appropriate, we obviously directly correspond. We will certainly do so at the council's pleasure. All right, so we've got a sign-in roster of individuals, and the first person is Mr. Steve Christ. Oh, geez, right in front of me. I'm looking for you, Steve. Welcome, Mr. Christ. For those of you who don't know, Mr. Christ is the proprietor of the finest ice cream in the state of New Jersey.
Oh, thank you.
And I can say that because my kids and I and my wife are there all the time. Great local business owner.
Thank you.
Mr. Christ, I'm sorry. You said you want to talk about cell towers. Welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you. My name is Steve Christ. I've lived and worked in the township, various businesses for over 30 years. Currently reside at 81 Georgia Tavern Road. And at 111 Georgia Tavern Road, there's an application from Verizon to put a cell tower up, which is a residential zone. I've been attending the zoning board hearings on it, and would like to bring it to the attention of this board that they claim that they had reached out to put this tower on township property. And then when I did a little homework on my own, I found out that they were referring to this PAL building, and somehow it's fallen on deaf ears. So I was wondering if this board could look into it, where the revenues from this cell tower, which are quite lucrative, could be shared amongst all the citizens, taxpayers of Howell Township.
Okay. We'll certainly do so. Mr. Chernetsky, you might not be prepared to get into that with us tonight, but is there anything you can briefly add about this?
I can't, my understanding is
Mr.
that...
Chernetsky, if you just pull the mic a little
I'm
closer.
sorry,
It's
should know
okay.
better. My understanding is that the inquiry into the PAL building happened many years ago, before there was a clear strategy from the governing body with respect to placing things on municipal property. And our consultant has been contacted to start evaluating this issue.
Okay, so it's under consideration, and you'll get back to the council?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
The PAL site is actually 0.4 of a mile from where they want to propose this this tower.
Putting it in there, okay.
So
It's a great
it might
idea.
behoove us to
Absolutely.
look into it.
Okay,
Okay.
of course. Mr. Walsh?
I believe it is an existing application at the zoning board, so I really don't want to comment on it, but I'll say this much, it's not falling on deaf ears,
Very good.
okay? That much you can be assured of. It's not falling on deaf ears.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Mr. Chris, good to see you.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right,
Good night.
thank you.
All right.
Mr. Joseph McGill. Mr. McGill, welcome. Come on up. Mr. Mr. McGill, if you just please introduce yourself, name and address for the record,
Sure.
please.
I'm Joe McGill, 410 West Farms Road. Until Mr. Christ had brought it to my attention with something he dropped by our homes, I was not aware of it. They notify only people regarding the cell tower within 200 feet of it. I'm currently taking a petition around to the neighboring homes of that proposed site, and so far, probably close to 90% who are dead set against this.
Okay.
They weren't notified about it. They, like I said, we didn't know anything until Mr. Chris brought it to our attention, and the neighbors are definitely opposed to this. I'm going in all directions away from that site, and there's very few people who are don't have objection to it. I've got 20 homeowners now, which represent probably, I say, inwards of 100 acres, I guess. But I'll continue the petition, and I'll bring it to zoning.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
McGill. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Wissner, welcome, sir. Come on up. Hello, Mr. Wissner. If you just give us your name and address, please, for the record.
Good evening. I'm Carl Wissner, 376 Conover Street, Howell, New Jersey. I want to address the ordinance 0713 that's going to be discussed later tonight, the one about AST and the COA situation. And I guess in essence of time, I'm going to throw out a list of questions and comments I'd like added to this if I could, and then maybe you could come back around. I don't know, because I think if I wait for answers on every question, I'm not going to get through 5 minutes, and I want to be quick.
And so that you know, Mr. Wissner, as well, when we get to that item, there'll be a separate hearing on that
okay.
issue as well, and you'll be entitled to come
Okay.
back and speak again then.
Okay. My questions are as follows. Will this ordinance allow for any other uses besides AST's current agreement and the use that's been agreed with COA? Question 2, can they sell their rights to this land?
Could you hold 1 second, please?
Sure.
Because I need to understand something. Mr. Bongiovanni, I'm going to need that answer from you, legally, if they can do anything besides that.
What I'll try
I
and
don't
do
need
is,
it now, though.
I'll try and list out all of Mr. Wissner's
Okay,
questions.
that's fair.
And then I'll give them over to Mr. Bongiovanni. We'll probably have a little bit of time between now and that public hearing, and then you can come back up, and hopefully we'll have the answers for you at that
Great.
time.
That works for me.
Okay.
Terrific.
Okay, question
Let me
number...
just, if you don't mind, Mr., I want to make sure I got the first question
Okay.
is, are
Will
there
this
any other
ordinance
uses?
allow for any other uses besides the one AST has had approved by the agreement with the COA court?
Okay.
Number 2, can they sell their rights to this land with the project approvals still attached and transferring to a new owner?
Okay. Okay, number 3.
On page 3 of the ordinance, section A, it discusses what cannot be put in buffers, et cetera. And I'd like to know, or have clarification in that section, that no retaining ponds, parking, sidewalks, et cetera, go into the actual buffer zones, and I don't think it's clear enough in stating that.
Okay.
Okay, page 4, at the very top, it says, in addition, no buildings, parking areas, or roadways may be located within 100 feet of the northern property line. I'd like to see that consideration to the wording being changed to no buildings, parking areas, or roadways may be located within the 100-foot buffer zone, because it's more specific.
Okay.
Also, above that, it says they're 10 feet, referring to the buffers, to the property I believe that the town has acquired for open space. I was just curious why it's not 50 feet. There's probably a reasonable answer for that, but I'm just wondering as information.
Why not 50 feet, Mr. Wissner? On which piece? On the,
Right above it, where it says 10 feet, the public and open private space in which the distance is required a 10-foot buffer.
okay.
There's probably a simple answer. Right below that, where it has the minimum distances on,
Can you tell
I
me
think
what,
there should be one in there that should say minimum distance from a buffer zone as well.
what page is that?
Right below it, same page, page 4.
Okay.
There's minimum distance from cartway, and then it goes all the way down to rear of the building. I'm suggesting one more saying minimum distance from a buffer zone and put a number in there. It may be 0. What I'm wondering is the concrete of the building, can it go right on the 100-foot line? That's really what I'm trying to get at, and personally, I don't think it should. But it's not clear.
Okay.
Down the page, line 4, section A, It says recreational facilities, including sidewalks, et cetera. Once again, I think it should say at the very end of that paragraph where it says characteristics of an age-targeted community, comma, but not in the buffer zone.
Okay.
Again, you can tell I'm worried about the buffer zones.
Absolutely.
Next page, 5, active recreational opportunities, et cetera. It says, if owned and maintained by a homeowners association. I'm curious what other ownership circumstances could exist there legally. I'm not aware of any, and there might be that I don't know about.
Okay. You want?
Section C, very top of page 5, it says, active recreational opportunities provided within the residential community may be restricted against use by non-residents of the community if owned and maintained by a homeowners association. I understand the sentence, but I'm wondering, it leads me to a question, what other ownership circumstances could there be besides a homeowners association?
Okay. We'll check that one as well.
Okay, right below that, section 5, point B, at the end it says the commercial portion of the development otherwise shall be exempt from the building design standards found in ordinance number 0632. Is that the ordinance that Mr. Chinesky kind of helped us author about facade and appearances?
That is that ordinance.
I strongly oppose them being exempted from that. I don't think legally there's anything we can do, but that allows them to create a monstrosity. That's a hole that you could drive a truck through, in my opinion.
All right.
How do you oppose that? Strongly?
Strongly.
Check.
You got it. Okay, D down below that, mechanical equipment or other utility hardware on roofs, etc. It says that they should not be visible from any public ways. I want to know what the legal definition of a public way is. Does that include neighboring private homes? In other words, my fear is from the street up the middle of it that you look at the front of the apartments, you can't see any of the crap, if you will. But from my house, you'll see all the crap if I don't have protection from it.
Okay.
You follow me?
We do.
Okay. Number 1 at the bottom there, it says the development application is exempt from review related to
Page
the
is that,
presence.
Mr. Worcester, what
Still
page?
on 5.
Okay.
The development application is exempt from review related to the presence or absence of historic or cultural resources and is exempt from any municipal requirements pertaining to the endangered. I don't know if that's even legal. I'm just questioning that. You know, I don't know what the DEP and New Jersey state laws are impacting that, but I don't see how we could waive that right as a town. Number 3 at the bottom, there is no maximum commercial space footage provided in the district. I was just wondering why. I mean, is that something to our benefit or not as a town? I honestly don't know. I'm just curious on that issue.
Okay.
The top of the page 6, and I'm almost done, it lists the words, the square footage of any special needs housing building will be accounted as commercial. I really don't understand that section at all, and I don't know what special needs means. Is that like for tractors to be parked or lawn equipment to be put in or what? I'd like that paragraph explained publicly so that we understand what that means, special needs. And then down at the near the bottom of that page in section 4, it says all ordinance or parts of ordinance that are inconsistent with the portions of this provision are hereby repealed to the extent of such inconsistency. I would just like to know what type of ordinances this would be canceling out for us. It's a little scary to have such a carte blanche phrase.
Well, how about the ordinance, the zoning ordinance that would apply to subject property?
To which?
How about the zoning ordinance that would apply to the subject property? That would be one. That would be inconsistent.
Or the design.
Well, actually, we're rezoning it to be consistent, I thought.
No, we're rezoning it to be consistent with the lawsuit, but there's a pre-existing zoning for that property, and also that's a standard clause that's put in every every zoning ordinance.
Okay. I mean, I realize that's a standard clause, but I don't trust AST. I don't trust the builders.
Mayor, it's been 5
Okay.
minutes.
Okay.
Mr. Wissner, there was 14 things. I'm going to turn this over to the manager and the attorney, and hopefully we can get them to start looking at these before the public hearing.
Super. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wissner. Okay, next is Judy Abate.
I'm going to switch places on that
With
with Mr.
Mr. Tintillo. Sure. You got it. Mr. Tintillo, come on up. Good evening, Mr. Tintillo. Welcome. If you just give us your name and address, please.
Good.
Vinny Tantillo, Casino Drive. Hello, Mayor, Council. I'm up here tonight about that cell tower, and I understand you can't speak much about it, but I also would like to know why the township wasn't notified and why we can't use the township properties. Sure, $96,000 a year can be well used in our township for salaries or whatever, and give the taxpayers a little relief. And I've been doing a lot of research on it, and I'd like to come back and speak about it. I have an awful lot of paperwork that I'm getting, but there are alternatives other than cell towers. Plus, this one they want to put in a not permitted use. I mean, it's in a residential area. We don't know enough about them. We don't know if they cause radiation, cancer, whatever. I have a daughter that had cancer. Mr. Chris has cancer. His wife had cancer. They certainly don't want it next to their house. I don't want it near mine. And many years ago, about 4 years ago, I believe it was, prior administration was advised about the PAL building, and they forgot about it. And at the time, I thought the PAL shouldn't have been notified in the first place. They're just tenants of the township. We own the property. And I don't want to talk too much because I'll be giving the applicants answers that I really shouldn't give them. But there are other ways, there are other alternatives. And just one I'll mention, it's called a burst tower. They're put on existing telephone poles up and down the highways. And if you research it, I believe Marlboro's had them for about 4 years already. So there is no need for towers, actually. And as far as height goes, cell towers, when you drop the dishes, you actually cover more area than you do when you raise them up high. And I think, I'm not positive, I thought we had a frequency engineer that works for the town, Declan O'Scanlan. And could he be notified and brought in on this?
I think he may have already been.
He has been?
He may have already been, so I intend to talk to him tomorrow.
Okay. So if I'd like to have permission to come back when I get all the rest of my applications together. I'd like to read them to you.
Welcome to come back anytime,
Okay.
Mr. Tillum.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Bate, do you want to come up now? Or you want to go down where he is on the bottom? Terrific, no problem.
She's hoping we've run out of time.
Okay. Mr. Marciniak, come on up. Welcome, sir.
Using up some of your 5 minutes, Mr. Marciniak.
What was this? Son? What'd you say, Sonny?
Mr. Marciniak, welcome, sir.
Hi, guys.
Just please give us your name and address for the record,
Yeah,
please.
Stanley Marciniak, Jerseyville, okay? There's a few... Where's the great leader? He's disappeared? When I get a chance, I'll show him something. This past Thursday's meeting, planning board, I was denied my rights to speak. Is the chairman here from the...
If he is,
Planning-
we'd want you to direct it to us anyway.
I want to know why they denied me from my speech and making a speech at the planning board.
You want us to give you an answer?
Mayor,
Yeah.
maybe I should field this one.
Go ahead.
There was an applicant had come back for an extension of time on his application. The planning board wasn't opening the application up. There were no changes being made to the application. He was just coming for an extension of time. I believe what Mr. Marciniak wanted to do was present evidence at that time to try to overturn the planning board's resolution, which was not possible. It's not legally possible at that time. All the applicant was coming back to us was for an extension of time because he had been for 3 years trying to get his paperwork through our township engineer's office, the DEP, So we didn't open the hearing to the public because we weren't required to by law. We were just granting the applicant an extension. That was the legal opinion from the planning board attorney.
Let me just say something. This applicant's been on the board for 15 years. 15 years, and you're still not done.
I understand that, Mr. Marcini,
I
but you
gotta-
understood Mr. Cachero's answer that night, last Thursday night, when he said, we didn't open it to the public because we weren't opening the application.
Well-
We were granting him an extension of time.
I was gonna speak on a few things, but I'll speak on only one or two things here. So I don't hold, this is to, from Joseph Rossler. I hereby certify, let me get these glasses, I can put the magnifiers on. Certify the proposed activities conducted on the general permit number 6 will not result in any direct or indirect impacts on swamp pink, bog turtle, documented turtles, salamanders, and everything else. So actually, the vernal pond is legal. You can't fill it in. Everybody wants to fill the vernal pond, and you can't do it. It's right in. Rossler signed his own piece of paper that you can't do it.
All right, Mr. Marciniak, I understand what you're saying. I sat on the planning board, I sat in this chair, and you sat in that one for 2 years. We sat there together. I know what you're saying. The problem was the planning board's hands were tied Thursday night because the
Okay.
application wasn't reopened. All that was being requested was an extension of time. Had the applicant come back and said, we want to move something 3 inches, then we could have reopened it to the public. And then you would have been able to present that evidence. But because the applicant didn't require or request any changes at all to his application, we could not open it to the public.
All right, that was fine, but now...
Mr. Sinek, we just need you, I'm sorry, we got to get you on the recorder. Need
For
you to,
me?
we do.
Oh.
You need to just stay close to the microphone, please. Thank you.
What you have is, you have a big problem here. I mean, a big problem.
Mr. Sinek, is this still about the planning board?
Me?
Is your comment still related
Yeah,
to the planning
sure.
board?
Yeah.
I need to respectfully ask you to perhaps go on to the next issue, only because we don't have any jurisdiction
Okay.
over the parameters of the planning board. Your comments are all well-intended, but unfortunately, that there's nothing we can do here at this level. Okay?
Well, later on, I'll show you this here. We have a drainage plan on 5 Points Road.
Okay?
This was done by, was done by Harvey Morrell, George Vecti, Jeffrey Nagel, Barry Johnson, Ernie Peters, Bill Johnson, Stanley, and Bruce Davis were all on a drainage plan on 5 Points Road.
Okay?
Okay? What they're doing now, I'm going to just tell you, they're cutting across 5 Points Road a 15-inch pipe. You just paved it.
Are you talking about this planning board
Yeah,
issue?
Yeah.
All right, why don't we move on to your next issue, please?
That's enough of my issue. I don't want no more.
All right, thank you, Mr.
But-
Marciniak.
I think I'll see somebody
Look,
soon.
you're absolutely entitled to be heard on this issue. I just don't know this is the right venue to do that.
Well,
All right, thank you, Mr. Marciniak. Mr. Hanlon, you're up, sir. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I reserve my comment for the public hearing on item
Of course.
881. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Cross them off.
Okay.
Cross them off.
Ms. Ilsa Wisner. Ms. Wisner, welcome. Terrific. Okay.
Cross them off.
I may pronounce this incorrectly, and I apologize if I do. Robert Ortinzi? Or, I think I pronounced it incorrect, and I apologize, sir. Okay, welcome. Come on up.
Right, just so you know.
Good evening, sir. After you get comfortable, if you just please give us your name and address for the record.
Robert Ortenzi, 180 Georgia Tavern Road.
Hello, Mr. Ortinzi.
I'm here about the cell tower.
Okay.
I feel it shouldn't go on residential property. It should go on township property. I really don't want it, but it's going to go. I'd rather see the township get it.
Okay.
And that's it.
Well, appreciate your comments.
Can I say, is your son like
Yeah,
80
my
pound
son.
cadet in the picture over
Yeah,
there at
that's my
Town Hall
son.
that I always get a chuckle out of?
Yep, that's my
That's
son.
your son, right?
Yep.
Thank you. We appreciate
You're
your comments. Thank you for coming out.
I
Mr.
believe, Mr. Attendee, don't you also have a son that is currently or has just recently served overseas?
Is he?
Thank you,
God
sir.
bless him.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Warren Curry. Mr. Curry, are you here? There he is. Good evening, Mr. Curry. Come on up. Welcome. No, it says 4-acre zoning. Hello, Mr. Curry.
Good evening. Warren Curry, Georgia Tavern Road. I had a lot of things, but I think in the interest of saving some time, I just ask one question. This map, which is very hard to read, even the big one is hard to read, but I guess a simple question I want to ask is, are there any proposed zoning changes that will be different from what we see on this map? Will you change any of the zones that we presently see on this?
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
That sounds like, in a
Are
future.
If you were to go on, Mayor, may I?
Please go right ahead, sir.
If you were to go on our website, and if not, we can get it for you. They're attached to the land use element of the master plan is a very well done map, actually, better than the one on our website. And it's shows all the colors where there's proposed a zoning map change. It's basically a proposed zoning map. And what we're doing is we're taking that, just really one little bite-sized portion at a time, and presenting it to the council to adopt as sort of as a phased approach to adopting the zoning map. And like so, Warren, as you'll see up there, the red stuff in the north.
Yeah.
If you look on the map that's attached to the master plan element, the two red things mirror what's on a proposed planning board's plan. And if we're successful and resolve our questions, we'll continue moving down south through the township.
So then you will be making changes in the present zoning as depicted here?
Yes, sir.
And I think, Mr. Curry, it's coincidental to the recommendation that ultimately came out of the master plan.
It will be.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what the hearings are slated for now. There's no predisposed outcome other than the council is going to deliberate on those proposed changes that were recommended as a part of the new master plan.
Mayor, I misspoke. I shouldn't assume that you're going to approve those
Of course.
changes. We're
Yeah,
just going to
no.
discuss what the planning board recommended.
So you're basically in tune with what the planning board recommended?
I think that's what we're going to hear.
Yes.
And they're certainly subject to additional public comment and potentially adjustments from the council, perhaps,
Just
as
that-
is, I guess, the case with any issue.
Now, so we're not painting with too broad of a brush. When we say what the planning board recommended, there was an initial set of ordinances. And I should say that those ordinances now, actually it was one ordinance, and it created all the new zones that the proposed zoning map had. What we're doing is we're taking, as we go down the map and we see where there's a new zone. Let's say on this one in red, we have HD3 as a proposed new zone. We write the codes and the standards for that. I can tell you that they're significantly different from the first go-around maybe 3 or 4 months ago. That didn't specifically come from the planning board. That's something that the council really needs to deliberate and study and get into what's being proposed and why and hear from the public.
Would it be safe to say there are no large, major changes on the horizon?
Even looking at this map, there are some very significant changes. For example, well, the one ordinance, the ARE ordinance, starts providing for cluster and lot averaging options, which is a very, new concept for us to incorporate. Other broad things that it includes is impervious surface limits. So those things were missing from all the ARE zones that will now affect each and every ARE zone.
Okay.
I would like to say, I don't know what one would consider large changes. I mean, I've had many questions as to the zoning changes. Some I've discussed from the dais, and, I have questions. So, what are large changes? I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I had many questions about Easy Street being all 1 acre, as an example. Okay, and I don't want to get into it, but I had many questions about that until I see all the proposed zoning changes from the master plan, until I I hear from people from the planning board and the master plan subcommittee that these are what they proposed. I don't know how to, Mr. Chinesky can answer that question any way he wants, but for me, I don't know what somebody would consider major changes. And I don't know, I can't evaluate what I've represented so far until I hear all of it from the professionals, until I get better knowledge of it.
I think that's your job up there. You just described it. My concern is that the master plan, the planning board, the master plan subcommittee and the planning board spent a good portion of the last 3 years on this thing. We had hearing after hearing after hearing after hearing. Midnight was an early night in many cases. I think that pretty much everything has been said. It's been open to so much consideration, and I would hate to see it just go down the drain. I think there's good reasons for the zoning that's in there now. I'm not saying that in every instance there couldn't be a good reason to modify it, but I think basically you got a good plan here. And now you have to reinforce it with ordinances. So it's just a concern of mine. I wouldn't want to see it all get thrown out the window and great big changes all of a sudden because somebody came here at a meeting one night and proposed big changes and you thought it might be a good idea. I hope you guys will give it better consideration than that.
Mr. Curry, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Curry,
I have a question.
I was at a lot of those,
I know you were.
well, a lot of the meetings, a few of them, I fell asleep after midnight in the back when you were still deliberating. And I have a lot of respect for you for the amount of time, and I know you've asked a lot of questions, a lot of input.
Yeah, I think there was a good group of people on that, and they all had the honest intention of doing the best they could for Howell Township.
Like me personally, I have some questions, and I don't know whether the time to bring it up is now, but I will anyway, just my nature. I mean, I have some questions because I'm a little bit in the gray about some of the water sewage system plan that we have in place, or that was sent to the county in like 2003 that still isn't approved. I mean, I would like to have more information to see how this coincides with our master plan that's been recommended by the master plan subcommittee and how it all fits together. I mean, I would like to see personally us have an open public meeting where I can get some input from the professionals, from the planning board engineer, the planning board attorney. So I'm clearer about the decisions I have to make. I mean, I'm a little bit befuddled that we gave a plan to the county in 2003 that still isn't approved in March of 2007, but I'm getting used to government. Sometimes that's the way it works. But I need to evaluate all these things with the changes that have been proposed by the master plan subcommittee. And I personally, for me, if, I spend a pretty lot of time asking questions of the professionals in our town, and I would love for us to have an open public meeting about the 208 plan to see how it coincides with the recommendations from the master plan. But that's up to the rest of the council
Why
and
don't
the
we,
mayor.
I think it's a great idea. Why don't we just, literally tonight under discussion, add a quick note, your recommendation to have a special hearing, open it up to the public, have a public hearing on this 208 plan, and let's put that on later tonight and see if we can agree to do
Only
it.
specific items, right?
What's that?
Specific items you're talking about, right? Like,
I want to know how it relates to the 208 plan that was sent to the county in 2003 as in correlation with the ordinance, with recommendations for the master plan subcommittee.
you feel you don't have all the information you need.
I think as it relates to the 208, your point, if I understand it, is the county hasn't acted on it since '03. We probably should have a public hearing and let people give some input and comments about it, and let's see what we might get. Maybe
I'd hate
agree
to see it
the
open up
beginning.
to public hearings all over
Well,
again.
Not the plan, not the master plan.
No, not the
Okay,
master.
Not the
okay.
master
Yeah, not the
plan.
master.
My experience with master plans is that you spend an awful lot of time and effort developing a master plan, which is required every 6 years. We never make the deadline. And then after it's all done, we immediately seek to change it all. or someone seeks to change it all.
Well,
Mayor, it's been 5
Okay.
minutes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Curry.
All right.
My comment to Mr. Curry, if I could have a second, is I think everybody thought, I thought when you asked, are there going to be any changes, I thought you meant, are there going to be any changes from that are being proposed in the zoning ordinances from the prior zoning? And that's a simple one. Yeah, they're all proposing to change prior zoning. But now I understand you meant, are we making major changes from the master plan?
Yeah.
Right. And everything that's been proposed so far is attempting to draft things that are from the master plan.
All right, great, thank you, Mr.
All right,
Curry.
thank you very much.
Thanks. Mr. Wendell Nansen. Mr. Nansen, come on up. Welcome, sir.
Mayor, Council,
Hello, Mr. Nansen, welcome.
Wendell Nansen, 40 Yellowbrook Road. A couple of quick questions. I'm going to ask questions. It's going to basically reiterate what Warren was saying. What I'd like to know is how does the ARE zone changes affect the existing zonings?
Okay.
Number two, impervious coverages, existing farms. If they want to put in a riding arena and they already are maxed on the impervious coverage, this existing farm, what avenue do they take and what kind of revenue are they going to have to spend if they have to put up another hay barn or if they have to put in a riding arena? You know, that all affects existing farms and existing open acres that are here. Are they going to have to go to a great large extent, go into the zoning board to get approval to put in a riding arena? How is this going to affect the existing farms? And that's basically my questions.
Yeah, I don't know that there's an easy way. Mr. Chansky, you want to give it, and then Mr.
Yeah.
Bongiovanni?
I don't think there's anything being proposed that's going to change anything under the right to farm, under the right to farm act and the ordinance. So some of your comments seem to be about farming.
Right.
Right. Well, none of them really change active farming uses.
Active farming uses, but we're still
Or even
required,
passive one.
even being under the Right to Farm Act,
Right.
to follow the township zoning ordinances.
Right.
And if these are ordinances, how is that going to affect the Right to Farm Act at that point?
They won't specifically do that, but they may change, for example, minimum acreage as being needed for particular parcels. There's a new 4-acre designation, for example, that doesn't exist under the current ordinance. There's a new 4-acre minimum requirement.
Right. Now, is that going to affect the existing ARE6 zonings?
Well, not the ones that are 1, 2, 3, and 4, no. There may be new ARE6 zoning as well.
Okay, so if this is adopted, the ARE4, it's not going to affect the ARE6 zones?
I don't think there's any maps proposed that's going to follow this ordinance that changes 6-acre zoning to 4-acre zoning.
In my recollection, Mr. Nansen, is that the planning board's recommendation was to take certain areas and reduce the number of residential homes that could be constructed. So areas that would allow more homes have been scaled back to 4, but what was already 6-acre, absent things that may have been involved in the lawsuit that the town had some years back. Absent those, nothing that is 6 is being reduced to 4.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
So the average, the coverage average is not going to change in the 6 zoning?
Yeah, the 6-acre zoning is not impacted by this. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
Actually, now there's a separate issue that he just alluded to, which is on impervious coverage. And the impervious coverage ordinance will have an effect on every zone, okay? Because it tends to put a maximum amount of impervious coverage that can be on any particular lot, residential lot.
Now I'm going to back up to my first question. Under
Right.
impervious coverage, that includes a riding arena.
Well,
Okay, if you average out an AR6 zone to a percentage of 3%, that's about 7,000 or 8,000.
well,
Is the arena concrete?
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah,
dirt.
we
but it's
well,
got
we've
cover-
made it, yeah, we've made an exception. First of all, it won't apply to dirt, and I believe we worked into the ordinance a provision whereby it would not apply to farms that have other kind of surfaces other than macadam or concrete, like to help utilize, to have trails around a farm and things of that nature. Like if you have crushed stone, that wouldn't be counted towards impervious coverage.
Yeah, but your
Two things.
hayborns, your feed storage, your indoor riding arenas, all of that's going to be covered under the impervious coverage.
Two things, Mayor. It's not what Mr. Bongiovanni noted. It is something we're going to be proposing tonight that's not a substantive change with respect to the paths and those sort of things.
Okay.
Those two 11 by 17 sheets you see show a 6-acre parcel and a 2-acre parcel with the proposed impervious limits on it. And you'd obviously have to inspect that if it's of interest to you. But basically, under what we're proposing, if you were to come in with a 6-acre conventional lot, and you were even to put an 8,000 square foot home on it, with the driveway, with a pool, a deck, a shed, you would be entitled to a total of 13,000 square feet of impervious coverage, and you would own, under all that I explained, you would only be achieving approximately 9,000. So, we could talk about, if the council's so inclined, to do a specific ordinance regarding impervious coverage for farm qualified activities down the road. That's something that's available for us to think about.
That's my question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nansen. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Rick Ryan. Mr. Ryan, come on up. Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Magid, come on up, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I'm Abe Magid, 89 Mariners Cove in Howell. I was pleased today. I went down, I spoke with the township engineer, Bill Nunziato. In fact, his office assistant Sue was there, and I received a copy of the application for the permit. This has to do, of course, with the removal of the trees that are falling into the Manasquan River. And particularly, I'm interested in my area, not the full 5 miles. And we talked a while, and he gave me good answers. I just want to point something out. The total cost of this project, now I guess that's the approximation for the whole 5 miles, or for the better part of it, is $27,500, less than $28,000. As I say, his assistant Sue gave me the map here, and that long line all the way down to West Farms Road, 5 miles, whatever it is, of which our area is a minuscule amount. I don't know if it's a linear interpretation, but if the whole business is $27,500, or say $28,000, I would say if I would interpolate it, it's several $1,000s, and rightly so, because I see from the application the explanation of what's going to be done. It says the Howell Township Department of Public Works the Howell Township Public Works will enter the river where it meets Bergenville Road, right-of-way. Now, there's other areas too, but I'm talking about this one. And when they go there, laborers with waders and chainsaws by Howell Township employees will cut up fallen trees and brush, float them downstream in a rowboat to be extracted by a track skid steer with a winch attachment positioned at the aforementioned entry points. The reason I'm reading this is fine, but here's the thing. Mr. Nunziato said hopefully and probably this permit will be sent out on Friday, which would be the 23rd. Let's say it'll be received in Trenton hopefully on Monday, or certainly by Tuesday, 26th to 27th. I was told by Mr. Drambowski at the DEP way back that if we don't hear from them in 10 days, we can go ahead. Mr. Nunziato said maybe it's 15 days. Point I want to make now is this. If we say that they've agreed to this whole thing, and I still, by the way, Mr. Nunziato confirmed to me they'll be in close touch with Mr. Jambowski, told me today, so that as this flows along, if there's any question about the whole 5 miles, certainly we can get some kind of okay for just that tiny little section for ourselves. But in any case, it looks like it's not going to kick off until sometime between the 1st and 2nd week of April, if all goes well, especially if it's followed up so we know where we are. Point I want to make is this. I address myself to you, Mr. Mayor. Way back in November, I said, let's do this. That's 4 months ago. We're now coming into potentially very heavy rain. I remember distinctly hearing from you around the first of the year, so much is involved. All kind, well, 60, 70 other places, great consultation of the council. I even asked you whether, this has to go out to outside people, with all kinds of language. I'm holding you directly responsible now. If heavy rains come now, this whole effort could totally go down the drain. I don't mean to be funny. It's not a play on words. That action should have been taken by you in November, certainly by December. All of this could have been done. And it turns out it's what they call a duck soup easy job compared to what was being proposed about all kinds of projections and talks and so on. None of this is true. So I say to you, finally, you better really hope in whatever fashion you proceed to hope that we don't have any 2, 3, 4 days of heavy rain with the fallen trees still in there between now and when they get to it. And of course, I assume that they'll, and I think that was confirmed to me by Mr. Nunziato, once the okay is there, following up with the DEP, that they'll jump off of Bergenville Road and get those out of there sometime between the 1st and 2nd week of April. Should that not be, I hold you directly responsible for having delayed this thing ad infinitum when it could have been done ages ago, since the job is what I call duck soup simple. Thank you very much.
Since you're finished, Mr. Magid, here's what I'm going to say, and we're going to be very brief. I have no problem you holding me accountable. It comes with the job of being mayor, although I don't have the single or unilateral power to authorize people to do things directly. That comes from the council in totality. This council, the council that sat here before this council, took the issue seriously. It's been dealt with, and we're doing everything reasonably possible to see to it this gets corrected, along with, Mr. Magid, we've heard from you, along with the issues from the 52,000 other people that we need to contend with. So,
sure, absolutely. And I've heard from you too.
We appreciate your comments.
Mayor, if I could just, Mr. Magid, I take great issue with you dumping anything solely on the mayor's shoulders. There are 5 people that sit up here. We share the responsibilities here. The problem is that the mayor gets popped for everything that goes wrong. Mr. Nunziato, would it have been safe to put people in that river in November or December when the water temperatures are in the high 30s to low 40 degrees?
Again, we had looked at it in the winter, November, December. We looked at it from a feasibility standpoint. We did go down there with waders. The water was cold, and it was more of a reconnaissance type of thing to see if we could budget it. But it was certainly not something that we were going to consider doing in the winter. No.
Right. Well, would we have been able to put people into that river in November, December, or even January, or even February when the water temperature is still no higher than the mid-40s, and have them in there for 6 to 8 hours, safely? If one of them fell, now they're wearing waders, and I was a fireman back in the day when we wore pull-up boots, and I know that we wouldn't go in a water one because if they filled up with water, you were gone. So now if somebody gets pulled underwater wearing waders in 40-degree temperatures, how long you figure they got? Off the top of your head. Or would it be safer to put them in the river in May or June trying to clean out these branches?
Mr. Howell, if I may answer, first off, let me say that we did put people in there in November, I think early November. We put volunteers in from the Office of Emergency Management. And I would also point out, not to embarrass Mr. Nunziato, but he dedicated a couple of weekends of his own time, and I'm still to see any comp sheets for the time he put in.
I'd like to see them, Ms. Nunziato.
They don't exist, I'm told. Because he needed to, from an engineering perspective, understand the mechanics of doing this. This is not a service that we've provided in the past. It's a new service. As we're going through the budget, you see that funds are required for it. And to answer your questions, would I put my public works employees in there without the engineer understanding exactly what the risks were? Whether it's dangerous or not dangerous, unless I have some guidance from one of my professionals, the answer is they're not going in.
Thank you. And,
Thank you.
and just one last thing. I spoke to this individual at the DEP in January. And at that point in time, he told me it was 15 days. It wasn't the 10 days. It was always a 15-day. Because I questioned, I said, so you're telling me if we don't hear from you in 15 days, it's an automatic approval? I said, if I had a developer come to the planning board and tell me, well, I didn't hear from the DEP on my LOI in 15 days, you got to give it to me, I'm telling him to leave. So I specifically questioned that. So.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Howell. I appreciate it. Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Magid, I don't think anybody takes lightly what you've said here the last 6, 8 months. I know I didn't. I don't think the mayor wanted to hear you come here every week talking about it. And, you know, if you want to blame the governing body for the last 4 years or the governing body now, you have every right to. Okay, but the mayor is not solely responsible. And if he is solely responsible, then when it gets clean, solely give him the credit. I mean, I don't think with the job comes just the negative. Comes the good and the bad. And right now, all of us are up here. And, of course, we all hope there's not big floods in April. We all hope that. Not just for your sake, not just for Mariners Cove, for the safety of all the citizens of Howell Township. I mean, and of course we're concerned about your property, but it's not fair of you to put it all on the mayor's shoulders. He's not the one who personally ordered anybody not to do anything, and he's not the one who personally ordered anybody to do anything, okay? It's a governing body, it's a team of professionals, and I'm glad something's being done. And when it's done, I would just hope that you'll be just as loud with praise as you were with anger. And I'm not saying some of your anger is invalid, but I'd like to see you be just as loud with praise. And if you're going to blame the mayor, blame us all, please. I don't want him getting all the credit. I don't want him getting all the bad part either.
Thank you.
Okay?
May I say, Deputy Mayor and all the council members, and this does not go just for Mr. Magid, but actually our ordinance says that you're really not even supposed to directly address your comments to one specific council member or mayor. I know it's not something we often enforce, but there's a reason for it, because it becomes just a one-on-one type thing that is not really appropriate to a council meeting. So it should be kept in mind that ordinance does exist.
Thank you, Mr. Bongiorno. Okay, I'm going to pronounce the last name incorrect, and I apologize. It's Luida. Is the last name Prince? I'm sorry. What's your last? Price. Come on up, Miss Price.
I'm a resident at the corner of West Farm.
We need you to. I'm sorry. We do need you to come up to the.
I'd like to designate my floor time to Mr. Tantillo.
Is there anything else? Is this on the cell tower issue? Is there anything else, Mr. Tantillo, to add? There isn't.
No.
All right. Just if you'd like to recognize your colleague, maybe enter her name into the record.
Thank you.
Speaking for her.
Vinny Tantillo, Casino Drive. Like I said before, I wasn't going to say anything else about cell tower. for fear to give them answers that we shouldn't be giving them. But Mr. Maggot just brought up a real interesting thing. And I agree with all of you. No one person should be picked on. That was absolutely wrong on his part. But we're talking about cleaning the river. I have 455 feet of the river on my property. And it just occurred to me just now, what happens if Bill's crew comes in to clean the river on people's property? And I'm sure it goes through other people's property. What happens if somebody gets hurt? Does the homeowner get sued? I know we don't own the water, but you own the land under the water. It's just got to me now. What would happen, God forbid, someone did get hurt? Is that why the Army Corps of Engineers are supposed to do this?
I think what we could tell you without giving you a finite legal answer is...
I'm just kind of worried about it.
Insured.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very valid observation, Mr. Tintillo. The municipality is protected on a self-insured basis in a joint insurance fund. One of our employees was out and became injured. My sense is it would be covered by the municipality's property and casualty. In that case, the casualty insurance. Maybe it's a workers' comp issue, but I couldn't imagine that we would hold the homeowner responsible.
It just run through my head just now, and there's an awful lot of people in that 5.5
Absolutely.
miles.
It's a good question.
One other thing I'd like to say.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Mr. Tantillo.
Not yet. About 26, 27 months ago, we had the court case and it was over, and I've been coming and coming and coming and coming. And everybody thought I was picking on Mr. Chinecki. I wasn't. And I do want to say he's the first one in 27 months that got it done. And thank you for having the maps changed. And I thank you for all the people in that 25-mile radius also.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Tintillo. Ms. Nowicki, Marcy Nowicki? Is Ms. Nowicki here? Marcy Nowicki. She outside, Ms. Nowicki? Will you check, Mr. Tintillo? You're going to see if Ms. Nowicki, do you know, you want to check and see if Ms. Nowicki's outside? Okay. We'll come back in the event she's here. Mr. John Ramos. Mr. Ramos? John Ramos, Eldridge Road?
Check to see if Mr. Ramos is here also, Mr. Tantillo.
All right. Ernest Rivera. Mr. Ernest Rivera. Okay.
Then you come back, you got to get a list.
All right.
Is he the sergeant at arms?
Mrs. Dixell. Mrs. Barbara Dixell? Yeah. Okay. Come on up, Mrs. Dixell. Good evening. Welcome.
Mr. Tantillo, was Mr. Ramos and Mr. Rivera out there?
No.
Hello, Mrs. Dixell.
Barbara Dixell, the village is Howell Township.
Hello, Barbara.
Hi. Couple of things.
Sure.
Today's paper, Jackson, has approximately 6,245 houses now in the hopper going to be built. Some are age restricted. However, there's 3,358 approximately single and multi-family homes. Boy, what I don't want to see their school taxes and those kids, and they're going to have to put up schools. I hope to God that we never, ever put Howell Township in this kind of harm's way. We don't need 6,245 more houses, whether it's age restricted or multifamily or single-family homes. God help us, because it's going to be two or three more schools. It's going to be elementary schools, middles, and high schools. And also, let me tell you, again, I said what I said here a couple of weeks ago. The Matita is the water supplier. Brick Reservoir is the water supplier. Can you have any idea what 6,000 houses is going to do on this water supply of that area? Ramtown in Howell Township gets its water from the Matita. I have grave reservations of what it's going to do to Howell Township. I really would. I said it a few weeks ago. I'm going to say it again. Please write them a letter. Please, from this council, write Jackson Council or Environmental Commission or somebody a letter telling them. I know that we sent there's an ordinance in favor of the Matita. I know that. I've got a copy of it. But somebody, please, ask them to have some reservation, some prudence, some something, because everyone's water is going to suffer. Well, water supply is going to suffer, and the environment. I hope you do that, I really do. Okay, another thing. Again, I'm going to ask you, Long Branch's response to the assessment company that we use the same one, response to horrific reassessment sought. Taxpayers group opposes paying appraisal firm, official agrees. Again, I'm going to ask you, is Howell Township ever going to do anything to address any of these concerns for any of the citizens in Howell Township that we just got hit between the eyes with the same thing, you know, really strange assessments from this company, and like I said, Long Branch is going after them also. I really would still like an answer on that from us.
Mr. Filiaccio, can I ask you a question? Or Mr. Chinesky? Has the appraisal company that did the revaluation appraisals already been paid in full?
Not in full.
70%, 80%?
I would say, well,
90%?
about 90%, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know the exact figures, but there is progress payments as they proceed, and since they are pretty much done with everything but the appeal process, I would assume that they're paid, you know, substantially paid.
Just based on the most recent bill, I'm confident saying there's only, even, you know, I'm being conservative with 90. I'm sure it's closer to 95, 96% paid.
Can I don't mean to do this, Mr. Dixell, but can I ask what you would like to see us try to do? I mean, I don't have a whole lot to comment about it because I'm not allowed to, but
I understand
I don't think the prudent thing to do would be throw it all out, pay another $1.5 million that it cost the last time, and start all over. I
Just
don't know if
very
that would be
upsetting,
prudent.
though, that they came in at full market value, and there's some other firms out there that are reassessing things around New Jersey are not coming in the same way they did, and it's...
With what? With full...
Okay, in Long Branch, I read a few months ago that there were houses that were reassessed a couple of years ago, and not the full time, at $300,000, and now they're coming in at $750,000. $750,000 for a reassessment, and it's just upsetting. I also want to bring up something about Freehold Borough School budget, and I'm stepping down for anything to do with liaison to the school board. As a private citizen, I'm saying this. They were, and I guess in an effort to save taxpayers' money, they cut some extracurricular sports activities, 12 staff positions. The district is proposing cutting one guidance counselor, a librarian, an art teacher, 2 custodians, 3 office assistants, and a math supervisor. They're going to put on language teachers. I would hope that our school budget is going to be voted on soon and come up soon. I would hope that our Board of Ed would be prudent and not come in with one of their $100 million budgets as they usually do.
Okay.
We've just been hit between the eyes with hell of a reassessment. We're going to get, the tax bite hasn't hit yet. It won't hit till August. We're going to get the school board. Are we going to be able to live in hell? I hope so.
Do you know the proposed budget's online already?
Excuse me?
The proposed school budget is on, it's already posted?
108 million.
Yeah, 100
Well,
million.
180 million is a lot of money.
108.
108?
108.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Mrs. Dalton, go right ahead.
Am I understanding correct, isn't the school board budget being voted on March 28th? Or
No, 17th.
No,
April
it's
17th?
April 17th.
April 17th.
Yes,
It's being
it's in
presented, I believe, at a meeting on March 28th. Right.
Statewide.
Oh, wow.
So we were proposing to perhaps have some kind of broadcast meeting. We need to get that set up
Immediately.
right away. Who would?
Right,
who's gonna
Mr.
handle that?
Chinesky's going to reach out to the board ed
Mr.
in
Chernesky's
short
gonna
order.
Get that moving.
Tomorrow morning, Mr. Chinesky?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
Mrs. Dixell. Have a good night. Mr. Librio, welcome, sir. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Librio. Mrs. Smith, good evening. Welcome.
Sorry, I would have been ready. I was going to stand up when he stood up.
Take your time, Mrs. Smith.
Mayor, at this point, according to our recently adopted protocols, to extend the meeting, a motion would be, to extend this portion, a simple motion would be required.
Sure, and Mrs. Smith is the last person. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to extend it. And Mrs. Abate.
It would be for
Yeah,
15
we had a
minutes.
lot of people split.
Terrific, so we'll go 10 minutes. Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second
We
that.
have a motion and a second. This is to allow Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Abate, and then we'll get to our
Mr.
business.
Mayor, I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
want to make a comment and remind council that we did establish a policy that we would not engage in back and forth dialogue with the public, and I just want to remind everyone of that, because I believe that's part of the reason why we've expended the hour.
Notice the direction we're all looking.
God willing, you'll be reminding me for 4 years.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Mrs. Smith, the floor is yours. Good
If
evening.
you're ready, Pauline Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road. Firstly, sometimes you get a lot more done by a little bit of interchange back and forth. And if it means 10 more minutes, it might be worthwhile. Just a
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
experience comment.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, as usual, I'm not going to speak about what I intended to speak about because some other things came up. But firstly, I would like to compliment everybody that worked on keeping Howell roads clear Friday and Saturday. Mr. Zernecki, I have to tell you, I had to, absolutely had to be out. I'm usually not on Friday afternoon. County roads, state roads were a mess. Freehold Borough, Freehold Township, forgive me, Jackson, were impassable. People were scared left and right, including myself. Every one of Howell roads that I saw was good. Very good. Thank you.
Applause here.
Did someone say freehold?
Now
What were they, six
now-
positions below you on the list?
Don't forget shared services.
Hold on, don't be using the time.
Now, I'm sorry, I have to go the other way.
Uh-oh.
We have a big problem.
Let me go back.
No, you get back here. We do have, and I'm going to go back to Stanley. I don't think Stanley understood what happened Thursday. And the big problem is, and I am going to complain, you don't automatically give an extension of time without asking certain questions, like, are all permits up to date? And if those permits are not up to date, what he had to say would be very pertinent. And if that question was not asked, it should have been.
Mrs. Smith, we want to hear all your comments. We value your input, but I think on that planning board issue, it might be best that this be directed at the next planning board meeting,
Well-
because there really isn't anything that we can do to interfere.
Yes, it is. You
with
can
the-
educate. That,
Well, that, I don't think this is the
I
place.
don't know that it is appropriate that we become engaged in that. I think it's probably something best that the planning board, really, with their professionals and their planning board attorney, get involved in.
and you can always open to the public. It doesn't have to be a legal necessity.
Okay.
If it's important, you always can.
What else do you
So
have for us,
please
Mrs.
do that. Okay, the other thing touches on one of Mrs. Dixell's comments, mine also. What you could have done, what you should have done with this measuring company is not to accept to tell them to go back and do it right then. That's what I tried to say here a couple of months ago. When I went in and asked questions about how they came about the valuation of property and why such a major difference in any other tax assessment valuation I ever saw, the gentleman used the term arbitrary formula. They figured out at the peak, the most expensive time of sales, all the sales in Howell, subtracted the improvements, which they did by an arbitrary formula, by the way, figured that all out, and that was his comment, not mine, his word. Then they subtracted by an arbitrary formula those improvements, averaged it out, and then they added another, his term, arbitrary formula on top of it, which was .209, why, never mind that it was arbitrary, why would they, if they took sales that were at a peak time, why would they add anything on top of it and consider that accurate? It's not accurate. And when I got up here and said it wasn't right, I did mean it wasn't morally or ethically right, but also I meant it is incorrect, and we are suffering. We will. Not everybody knows they should appeal. We shouldn't have to appeal. And that's what I would have liked to see you do. Also, there are people under the impression that you haven't accepted those figures. They're certified. We have the cards. You have accepted it, whether you know it or not. They didn't do it right.
Is that a fact?
Well, it's not to the council to accept. It's been accepted at the County Board of Taxation.
You would have had to beforehand vote to do something to stop it.
Okay, I did not know that, but it has been accepted then. Okay.
Okay.
I don't want to take away from your time, but despite whatever arbitrary formulas they were stating to you,
Get the wrong clock.
they do have to show that the date of valuation, that the properties are at the fair market value on the date of valuation, which I think is October 1st, 2006. So regardless of what formulas they're talking about, ultimately that is what the county board will demand.
Mayor, it's been 9 minutes.
Okay.
They had their vote and everything. It may have been 6.
Thank you,
I was
Mrs.
watching.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
Thank you,
Mrs.
Mrs.
Debate,
Smith.
good evening. Come on up. Thank you for your patience here. Mrs. Debate, I think you know if you just give us your name and address after you get comfortable.
Yes.
They should be. You just kind of need to pull one of them as close to yourself as possible.
My name's Judy Abate. I live on Fairfield Road.
Good evening, Mrs. Debate.
And I was prepared to come tonight to do battle about the zoning map. But I think actually most of my questions have been answered. And I have to kind of apologize for flooding your mailboxes with emails. But I find it much easier to write than to speak.
That was you?
But I'll try here. You know, actually, I just want to get this clear. Yesterday, I was handed this zoning map by Mr. Lenahan. And the last notation on it says, March 2007, corrections to existing errors. Okay? Now, so am I to assume that now this is the current zoning map?
May I see it?
And this one is the
You have to speak into
suggested.
the mic, please, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I want to know if that's the current zoning
Mrs.
map.
Debate, would you just kind of tilt that? It should
Yeah.
bend down.
Okay,
That's great.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I want to make sure that that's the current zoning map, and
Mr.
that this
Jansky, is
one
that the most recent map?
is the proposed one.
That's definitely the proposed.
Yes.
Because that was distributed this evening.
And, you know, I can see with my bad eyesight that there are some changes on here that aren't on there. So that was my assumption, okay?
Mr. Jensen, can you tell what that map that was just presented to you is, what map is that?
So once, Mayor, if I may have a...
Go right ahead, take a minute.
And, you know I was like pretty excited when I saw the tape from March 6th. You know, and it was said that the engineer or nobody could change the map, but the judge had changed it. So I'm very glad to see this, but I just want to make sure that that's what that is.
I was excited too, ma'am.
I know you were.
I'm a little excited
I know,
myself.
I know.
Mayor, the March 2007 notation was a minor change. This map does not reflect the direction I was given by the land use attorney with respect to the Tantillo matter. So
Okay.
that map that you have there, aside from the red, is the accurate zoning map.
Oh, okay,
aside from what's shown in red, because that's what's proposed.
okay. Now, our property was corrected on there, but, so that answers that question. I do have another one. You know, ever since the bypass entrance and exit is on Fairfield Road, and then they built those two schools at the other end of Fairfield Road, the traffic is just horrendous. And you know, the intersection of 524 and Fairfield is an accident looking to happen. You know, there are times when you have to wait there 5 or 10 minutes in the morning and
Mrs.
at
Bate,
night.
just a real brief update on that, not to take away from your time. The
That's-
county's actually putting a light in.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
county is putting
Because I had
light in
heard
there.
about that
They
a
are.
long time ago. That's fine, that's all then, thank
They
you.
haven't looked at our map in 4 years with the wastewater management plan, so no promises on when that light's going. I don't want you up here 2 months from now saying, why ain't that light in on Fairfield Road at 524? Deal?
No, I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
All right, thank you, anything else, Mrs. Abate? No. Okay, thank you. All right, that'll close the public portion. The council's going to just take a 5-minute recess, and then we're going to get back into our agenda. Thank you. We're removing 9A2.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second?
We have a motion, and there is a second. Are there any comments?
I just have one comment on 9B11. I understand that this individual came in under a hardship. Mr. Nunziato, if I recall, there was a structure fire at that home? Is that, they were under a fire permit?
No, I think that the was under a fire, so the house was, you know, damaged, so this was an emergency situation.
When did that fire occur? The only thing I'm trying to ascertain here is, was this known to this homeowner before West Farms Road was repaved? And could they have put in this gas line then, or did this fire occur after?
It's my understanding it was after the fire.
Okay.
All right, any other comments on the add-ons and the removal? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, okay. Regarding our agenda, the first item we have is 8A1. 8A1 is a public hearing and potential adoption, 0079. Get the council's attention, open up that material. Is everybody ready? Okay. Ordinance 0079, introduced and passed on first reading on March 6, 2007, and published according to laws now being taken upon for further consideration at a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of March 9th is submitted, and is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 Land Use to revise the ARE zoning district to provide lot averaging, open lands, and farmland preservation options, and to establish the ARE 4 zone as recommended by the Master Plan Reexamination Report.
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting, members of the general public, for a hearing with remarks for or against potential adoption of this ordinance. Anyone who'd like to be heard, please come forward at this time. I think Mrs. Smith was first. We'll get to you, sir, and then we'll get to you, Mr. Henley. Mrs. Smith, you're up. You were legitimately up first, and ladies first.
Pauline Smith. I don't have too much to say. I'm cautiously optimistic about this ordinance. We've worked long and hard on it. I think my biggest concern is that it accomplishes what it's supposed to, and that's, by that I mean, I hope the words are there that make it strong and do what it's supposed to do. I only have one real issue with those words that I see now that jumped out at me, and that's provision for open space acquired. That would be on page 6, right at the top. On the, well, maybe I should explain from the page before what it is. It's open space that from the cluster provision that goes to the township, and these are the purposes and uses that the ordinance provides for. And the one on the top line, it says, undeveloped open space, public or private recreation facilities. The private recreation facilities is what I object to. That leaves an open door for a lot of things, including a commercial use, which would actually develop the site and not for the public. We have seen in the past groups, not really applications, but groups, commercial groups, come in and say, well, if you have the property or buy the property, and we'll be partners and we'll build it, and it'll be a commercial facility. And I don't think the municipality should be in that kind of business. It doesn't serve the good of the public. But if a governing body should consider that, it shouldn't have already been approvable in an ordinance.
Mr.
Do you understand what I mean?
Can I-
Mrs. Dalton, go right ahead.
Mrs. Smith, when I read that, I understood it to mean, and maybe I'm wrong, so I'll ask the professionals for an opinion. I understood it to mean that private use, private recreational facilities meant private as regards use by the residents of the development by private covenant or deed restriction, so that if there's a homeowners association that would perhaps put in a recreation facility, a park, a pool, et cetera, that would be permitted in that open space area, but not, I did not understand it to mean a private recreation facility open for commercial
Let me
use.
explain a little bit further. I guess I kind of jumped into it in the habit of hurrying. I understood it to include what you're saying. I thought of that also, but it shouldn't have been either or. My point is, that part of it would be okay, I have no objection to that, but that this, the wording, the verbiage in this, shouldn't leave a loophole. In other words, exactly quoting what you said, a group of people and a restricted deed, et cetera, not, some verbiage that would limit it anyway, is what I'm talking about.
Mayor, if I could ask the manager a question?
Sure.
Tom, I understood this to read the exact way that Councilwoman Dalton did, where if a developer comes in and doesn't have a homeowners association, or it's not a gated, for want of a better word, community, and they build a park, like the one on Camelot Drive, that's a public facility. And if there is a gated community or a homeowners association, and they put a swimming pool in and a clubhouse, that makes it a private facility. It's not a provision in there that allows somebody to just go build a building and make it a commercial entity. Is that correct?
The attorney and I are going to tag team these.
The permitted uses, if you go back a few pages, that settles the whole issue. These are the only permitted uses available. So, it's agricultural, horticultural, single-family residences, the municipal buildings, et cetera. So those are the only uses permitted. Nobody's going to be able to come in there and start a new private swim club or something like that.
Okay.
Right.
With all, maybe you accept that, but with all due respect, I've seen attorneys punch holes in ordinances. I've watched it closely for the last 20, 25 years, and it's made me, I've been accused of being suspicious. It's not suspicious, it's careful, for the protection of the people. And if a few words would make that, it wouldn't change the meaning of the ordinance, and you wouldn't have to redo anything. It would just make it a little bit clearer.
Mrs.
And I would
Smith,
ask you to do
I
that.
sat up here with you on the planning board, and attorneys will fight the law of gravity. They will fight anything.
Anything else, Mrs. Smith?
That's basically it. Time will tell, and can it be amended later. I just hope it's, as I said, I hope it accomplishes what we intend.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
Could it be amended later?
This can be, and it's a very complex ordinance.
Right. Okay.
And so we're taking close notes, and we're going to definitely research these comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
you.
Mrs. Smith. Come on up, sir. Please come on up. Welcome. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm Tom Clayton. I live on 73 Casino Drive.
Welcome, Mr. Clayton.
And I've got a question about the ARE2 zone.
Okay.
It's on page 10.
Okay.
Well, can I get to it, please, sir?
Page 10?
Yep.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
The first paragraph at the top says, "The number of lots on the conventional concept plan should be the maximum number of lots permitted under the open land subdivision." And then underneath, it says at least 50% of the tract shall be designated as open lands. Now, if you have to put 50% of the tract in open lands, is that going to leave you the allowable space to put the same amount of lots as you would under the conventional land? My premise is, I've got 27 and a half acres. I've got a guy that wants to buy it. He thinks he can get 13 acres under your
13
13
residential
lots under your builder's type of acreage.
Any chance we can get you to go into farmland preservation?
We'll send Mr. Costigan to see you tomorrow.
He's already seen me.
You like Mr. Costigan, sir?
Beg pardon?
You like Mr. Costigan?
Oh, yeah, he's a fun guy.
Why don't you have breakfast with him tomorrow?
But the thing of it is, if he could get 13 acres under the conventional, if I give half of it to the open lands, he's got 13 acres left to put 13 houses on, which doesn't allow any room for any kind of right-of-way or roadway or whatever you have to put in.
The way the ordinance is designed is it allows the planning board to approach a standard, take a look at a standard subdivision, understand conventional zoning, and then choose from 3 options, either the open lands option, the lot averaging option, or the conditional. So the board has a lot of flexibility in terms of looking at these developments. But the bottom line is the ordinance is clear that we start with the conventional, what can you legitimately fit to the satisfaction of the board, and then from that, they will explore the environmental features and maybe agricultural features to see how things can be reasonably shifted and not restricted by the conventional codes to preserve that land. So the board, this ordinance gives the board a lot of flexibility in it's supposed to be a win-win for both parties, and it gives the board the flexibility it needs to help make that happen.
Oh, okay.
All right. Mr. Chematsky, just if I have, for the benefit, when an individual would come to the planning board, he would have to provide a yield map.
Yes.
Correct. And then when one of these other options, A, B, or C, he would have to provide that same yield map, but he wouldn't be able to get bonuses by clustering or the open space.
No.
He would have to come, if in your case you have 27 and a half acres, your engineer and your attorney would have to come to the planning board with a yield map showing that you could actually fit 13 residential lots on that piece of property.
That's correct, Mr. Howell.
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Dalton, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I can
Please.
address, am I correct that we are planning to do away with the so-called builder's acre and go to a real acre?
Yes.
That's what the ordinance calls for.
Correct.
Okay.
Just want Mr. Clayton to be aware of that.
Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, so I don't think this ordinance gets into what an attorney claims, okay? It more addresses on options that will be beneficial to the township and who's ever developing the site. But first, that yield map comes into play. Like you say, you have 27 and a half acres. How much of it's wet? None. I don't know that. Okay, but, you know, it has to go before the planning board first.
Oh, I understand.
You know?
I just didn't understand how you could have 13 lots and still get 50% of the open space and still have room enough to put a road.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Well-
you for your comments.
It seems like
I,
you're taking property.
why don't you come back up, because we want to get you, I think we got the gist of your comments.
Mayor,
Just
just
wanna put you on the record.
to answer that point specifically, the idea is also to benefit the township in a sense that it would reduce the number of roads. And that's the arrangements could be such that it could perhaps front onto an existing road. Who knows? There could be a whole variety of variations to looking at this.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, sir. Mr. Hanlon, you're up. Who else would like to be heard on this ordinance? Just show of hands. Anyone else? Mrs. Dixell? Okay.
Good evening,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor,
Hanlon.
council members. My name is Christopher Hanlon. I'm an attorney from Hanlon and Neiman in Freehold. I'm here tonight representing property owners that are in the land affected by the zoning map change and whose land will also be rezoned from ARE1 to ARE2.
Okay.
So I'm addressing two ordinances, one which is on for this hearing and one which is on for first reading, which will redesignate us.
Mr. Hanlon, would you like the wireless with the handheld mic? Would that
No,
be a help to you in the event you need to use the board for anything?
I can actually
You
probably
sure?
sit down, yes.
Whatever is
I'll try to-
whatever is easier for you.
Try to control myself.
Mr. Mayor, point of order,
Go
before
right ahead.
Mr. Hanlon
Sure.
starts, can I just ask our counsel if is Mr. Hanlon obligated to identify the parties whom he represents?
I was just about to.
Okay.
I'm going
Okay.
to. Yeah. I represent Gross and Gross Associates. That's a partnership made up of Carl P. Gross and David Gross and the trust of Harry Gross. And they own land, and I'm going to give you the lots and blocks. But with your permission, we have highlighted it in the area so you can follow it on this map.
That'd be
That
great.
will help you understand what I'm going to talk about. Sure. The project engineer's here.
Right.
He's going to hand the same map to your professional.
Mr. Hanlon, when you get comfortable again, we just got word you need to pull that mic a little closer so we can get you on the record, please.
I will do so, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Formally, it's Block 172, lots 4, 5, 6, 8, 801, 10, 11, and 1101. More specifically, so you can have a point of reference, it's the area that I've put in red, which is located in the area that is within your red area on the map that is proposed for first reading. This is an approved subdivision. Okay? We have 17 lots approved on 41 acres. It was approved based upon application by the planning board of the ARE1 zoning. And as I indicated, the problem that we are here tonight is to address the rezoning to ARE2, which will be accomplished by two ordinances. The one you're about to pass on, which will identify the new standards for ARE2, and then the one you're going to introduce for first reading, which will adopt the map, which will then put our land in the new zone you're going to create with the first ordinance. We're asking you to consider an amendment to the proposed ordinances to address grandfathering. We're not objecting to the zoning change, but here's our concern.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes,
Allen,
sir.
before you go any further.
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to understand exactly where this property is. Is this where that Howell Road, is that where the motorcycle shop, is that the motorcycle shop up there on the corner?
Go to four-way stop and go left, Mike, headed towards Colts Neck High School, I believe.
Right here, it's off of Clover Hill Drive.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm fine then. I just needed to know because I had a couple of clients that were in that vicinity, and I didn't want to be sitting up here making a decision if it was one of my clients' homes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We anticipate that this application is the approval is approximately 2 years old. We've gotten a one-year extension from the planning board. We anticipate that within the next year we'll finish the approval process and hopefully we'll start construction. We anticipate that given the status of the marketplace, we're not going to finish construction within that one-year period. And my concern is the following. We will probably sell lots which will be appropriately sold under our approval, under the old zoning. And my concern is that when we get to the point where our approvals expire, if we're not grandfathered, we're then going to have a mixed lot subdivision size. In addition, we're going to be discussing, I guess, with the people who buy our lots now, which we're allowed to legally sell, the fact that their lots will not be grandfathered under your proposed zoning ordinance changes. Right. They're going to run into problems with setbacks on both sides and most specifically the rear. Unfortunately, our lots don't all look like the nice example here that is a very long rectangle. They're aesthetically designed with winding roads. It's a hilly development. We kept it hilly. The lots are all irregular shape. Some of them, although have legal building envelopes now, will be adversely impacted by the new rear yard setback that'll be imposed, and those people won't be able to put up a deck or a shed if they get, once the house is there. In addition, as you can see from the map we've handed out, most of the land which is immediately adjacent to ours is already developed under the ARE1 zone, and all of those homeowners, you're also going to rezone ARE2, and they're going to run into the same problems with doing anything on their lots, because they're going to face new setbacks both on the side and the rear. Their lots will automatically become non-conforming, and they're going to have to be in here for the Board of Adjustment for variances for anything they're going to do. Now, what I'm asking you to do was actually recommended as part of the 2006 Land Use Plan element, which is adopted by the Planning Board in April of 2006. It had a recommendation for grandfathering in it. It's on page, oops, lost my place. I sat here for an hour and a half and I had it ready to go, but now.
Take your time, Mr. Hanlon.
When you come back next time, you can.
That I would strongly object to. No, this is not your memo. Sorry. Where is it? Okay, got it. Page 20 of that 2006 land use element for Howell Township addressed non-conforming lots. And the proposal there was the plan acknowledges that changes in land use classifications and densities will create non-conforming vacant lots. With regard to vacant lots in any residential zone throughout the township, the plan proposes the grandfathering of all vacant lots of 20,000 square feet or greater, so that each of these vacant lots has a residential development opportunity. I have to admit, I did not participate in what was probably a very thorough planning, master plan review process that has led up to the point where the township is now going to start implementing numerous zoning changes, probably over the next year, consistent with what your manager has indicated. So I don't know, I can't say why the grandfathering appeared to get off the map. I don't know if it was an oversight or an intentional decision. I'm not criticizing anybody. I know my client just got notice of this process and called me to participate. And what we're primarily asking you to do is to consider a grandfathering provision which would avoid the type of multiple bulk variance that's going to be created for not only us, but for it looks like the bulk of the land that adjoins our subdivision in the neighborhoods that exist there now. Alternatively, if you don't want to consider grandfathering, then what we'd like to consider is that we'd be placed in your new R1 zone that eventually will come up. It's my understanding that ordinance was on for tonight for first reading, but that got pulled off. That's the ordinance that was withdrawn. Because that would be more consistent with the approvals we've already got from the planning board. The easiest solution would be the grandfathering amendment.
Okay, I think we certainly understand your comments and your position. Any questions from the council members?
I'd like to hear from Mr.
Mr. Janetzky, do you want to make any comments or remarks on this request?
We can. This always presents a problem for governing bodies with respect to creating nonconformances. We can, I think, to add that provision now, the grandfathering provision would represent a substantive change to the ordinance. But having said that, the R1 was pulled because the subcommittee wasn't ready yet. We sent it back to look at some impervious coverage issues. What I'd recommend is that you allow them to research, if council's so inclined, both options. Let them comment on whether or not, and then we can handle either one, and we can handle both those issues in one ordinance.
As an amendment?
As an amendment, yes.
So your recommendation is we proceed tonight, we take these comments under advisement, and then you'll study up whether or not there is an appropriate means for making a potential alteration, bring it back to the council, council will deliberate, and then we may or may not take action.
That would be my recommendation,
Okay.
and if council's so inclined, then we'll do that.
Okay.
Any comments? Go ahead, Mrs. Dalton.
when we rezone these lots from 1 acre to 2 acre, and so someone with an acre and a half is now non-conforming, is Mr. Hanlon correct that now if they want to put up a deck, they need to come in for a variance, for bulk variances?
Yes.
Okay. Then this issue seems to me not only applicable to this zone and this area. I mean, I want to understand why we would do anything that would force homeowners who have existing homes, who want to put up decks or anything else that are very minor situations, to have to come in and get bulk variances for those types of situations. And I would like to see something in general for when we affect people's properties like this.
Well, the law on the subject doesn't require that your zoning eliminate all nonconformities or to have a specific percentage of nonconformity. Basically, the least number of inconformities created by new zoning, the better. But it's not required to eliminate, because there may be reasons why that you may want to have a zone in place, notwithstanding, let's say you have 100 different parcels and 10 of them become non-conforming. So there's nothing that says you have to have a grandfather clause. But this particular master plan portion that the attorney points out did recommend it for all lots in every zone, I suppose, that are 20,000 feet or larger. I'm a little bit surprised that it only applied to vacant lots, however, and I wonder if that is really going to address the main problem of creating a lot of non-conforming lots. I would think since most of, say, the 1 acre zones and maybe an awful lot of the 2 acre zones are already developed, you might want to consider applying that, if you apply it at all, to not just vacant lots, but already built lots.
To add on to that, there are some instances where you do want that to happen, or you may want that to happen, just thinking as an extreme. If a property was covered over 50%, a 2 acre lot, 1 acre was covered with impervious coverage, and the owner now came in and asked to put up a shed, well, clearly they would need a zoning permit now because we have an impervious coverage limit in place. So there are instances where you want that to happen. Or you've received many complaints, let's say, just thinking of my previous assignments where there was no setback requirements for accessory uses or height limits on accessory uses. A person's shed collapses and that happened to be like 20 feet high. Well, now they have to comply with the new one, and they shouldn't be able, many councils believe, to fall back on the grandfather clause. So it's an issue that needs to be carefully looked at.
Well, I'd like it to be carefully looked at, because I don't think that people who buy homes and they are in conformity and then want to make improvements to them and beautify them and do things that create tax revenue for us should be thwarted in that attempt, because now they have to hire Mr. Hanlon or someone else to come in here and plead their case in front of the zoning board.
But we'll look to strike some balance that the council's comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mrs. Dalton. We have to be very careful as not to create hardships for people. Particularly people who might not even know that they're being impacted by this until they go to put their deck on or what have you. Any additional comments?
I would like to know if I could ask either Mr. Curry or Chairman Schneider from the planning board who were in on those meetings what they interpret as the intent of the planning board subcommittee was, the master plan subcommittee, when they mentioned grandfathering. Could I do that? That's part of what I mean about what I said before, about understanding that it came from the planning board. Like, here's an example. Grandfathering was recommended from the master plan subcommittee, and now it's not mentioned in the ordinance. That's what I meant, Mr. Curry, how I would like to know that was mentioned, what your interpretation of the intent was, so I could piece it together. Yeah, are you, Mr. Schneider?
Chairman
I'll be glad to
Schneider,
hear from
good
both of
evening.
you.
Good evening. My recollection is that the grandfather clause was discussed and was recommended. So where it happened is just as Deputy Mayor Walsh has stated, we don't know where that went by the wayside.
I don't know where it got lost either, but we did recommend it.
Okay, I'm
And
just,
that was only for vacant, I'm sorry.
No,
Vacant lots over
my
20?
recollection in general, being at those meetings, was that we did not want to create a hardship.
That's correct.
And that for someone who legitimately wanted to add a deck or do something to their home, that they would not have to go to the zoning board each time it were to happen. If their home, Lord forbid, burned down to the ground, and they needed to rebuild their house, and it was now out of conformance, based on this ultimate change, there was quite a bit of deliberation on that score. And it was,
And you recall when discussion came before this committee in areas that were R3, like Candlewood and such, and we were talking about setbacks, and that would create variances for almost everybody. So we came back to review that also.
that answer your question, Mr.?
I mean, it does, because I would think that people would be frightened even
Yeah.
to buy a house in an area that's now no longer zoned.
Not
I mean,
conforming.
how could you sell your house if people were afraid that they couldn't build a deck or make a small addition?
All right, I think, Mr. Chinesky, the takeaway from the council as adjunct to this particular public hearing is we'd like you to go back and come back with some recommendations for altering this to lighten the load, if you will, on taxpayers in this score.
Sure.
Okay.
I would like to ask one more question, Mr. Hanlon, too, before we stop. Go ahead, Mr.
I just want to say, I know specifically we wrote in that language in the R1 that we're tabling. So it's specifically in there. Aside from a recently approved development, which may have had its own unique design, as was stated, I'm not certain that the new bulk standards have that drastic of an effect in terms of side yard, front yard, rear yard setbacks. But we will take a very close look at that. I just don't want that problem to be exaggerated in the minds of the public for existing homeowners. But again, I do acknowledge that it would be a problem for a recently approved subdivision.
Mr. Chinesky, the master plan subcommittee had recommended, and I don't know how this played in, to change the front setback to 30 and increase the rear setbacks to 50 feet, so that citizens in the future would be able to put in a pool or a deck. Previously, we had it reversed. It was a 50-foot front, and it was 30-foot back. So the master plan subcommittee had recommended that this be reversed.
Okay.
The reason we put the reason it's been recommended to change the R1 is because you would have basically every ARE1 lot would be undersized in total square feet. So there's an instance where 99% or so of your lots are going to be undersized. There's a real need for it. Here, I think Mr. Chinesky says there may not be as great a need because the bulk requirements may be very similar. My recollection is the bulk requirements are the same between the ARE 2 and 3 zones, but there may be some differences between 1 and 2.
There are actually, the rear yard setback increases by 10 feet.
You got to speak into the mic, Mr.
Hey,
Hanlon.
Mr. Hanlon, if you'd kind of pull in, please.
There was no lot width or lot depth requirements in the ARE1, and now they exist for ARE2. Now, those won't impact house additions and things like that, but it will impact empty lot situations.
Okay.
Mr. Hanlon, I need to be
Right
clear
now,
about,
I'm sorry, but just like under the existing ARE, the rear yard is 40 feet. So under what's proposed, it would be under ARE3, it would be 40 or 35. So again, you know, when you think about a 20-foot deck, a 30-foot deck, I just don't want people to get panicked over what's being said. I'm pretty sure it's not going to affect all that many properties. It may affect some, and we'll have to come up with language for that, but not as broad-based as it sounds.
But as far as this application, I think the intent of the planning board was to grandfather,
Okay.
so that there would not be a hardship in this particular case.
I need to understand, just some simple questions for Mr. Hanlon. So this was already approved, the subdivision for 17 homes,
Yes, sir.
and it was zoned ARE1?
That's right.
Okay. So if it was changed to ARE2 now and you had to go through the process, would it yield 17 homes?
Well, I don't know, probably not, because there's steep slope, there's wetlands. I don't know, but we'd have to re-engineer the whole thing. So right off the bat, you're talking about another $100,000 in engineering costs?
I'm just trying to be clear about it.
I don't, and the answer is I don't know, possibly, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, okay. And, Mr. Bongiovanni, how long do they have to build by law with the approvals?
Their resolution of approval gives them 3 years with the right of 2 one-year extensions, or
Actually,
3 one-year extensions?
It's 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
2 years, 3 1-year extension.
Right.
And we're right now starting our first 1-year extension. And
Well, you're going to ask for it.
we did ask for it, and we received it.
Okay.
And it's still, we did it in advance, so it starts in a week or so.
Okay.
So
And you haven't started yet, Mr.
we have a
Hanlon?
year left. No, and that's a long story, but the point is, we expect to start within the next year, and that's why I envision the problem of having 1 foot in the ARE zone and 1 foot out. And
Mhm.
that's not only a problem for us, but for planning, because again, the whole thing is gonna turn into a mishmash.
I personally, I would need to know more about it, but I don't think it's fair to give somebody approvals for something and take them away. That's just a personal opinion. I mean, I wouldn't want them taken away from me. I wouldn't want them taken away from my neighbor. You know, so.
And this isn't a complaint. This
No,
is-
no, I'm not.
This is an observation. Getting an approval from the Howell Township Zoning Board is quite an effort. Okay, they put a lot of effort into it, they put a lot of work into it, and if we get to the point where they say yes, it's been, I think, it's been engineered to the max for both public safety and aesthetics.
Okay.
We're there, and
Good.
that's what I'm trying, and obviously, you can appreciate, I'm trying to keep that.
I just want to be clear about it.
Mayor,
Thank you.
Mayor, just one more thing for the benefit of the public, if I may. So, it was mentioned before that we established lot depth and lot width standards that didn't exist previously. If a resident was to come in for a patio or a deck or something in their rear yard, they're a pre-existing lot, and the setback requirements have nothing to do with their lot depth or width. So it wouldn't even be looked at as an issue.
That would be considered a pre-existing non-conforming lot.
Right, but for purposes of the deck, we would just be looking at the side, rear yards, and impervious
Well,
coverage.
that's good news. Okay. That's
Yeah,
great.
so it's not,
Yeah, it's not as restrictive
Okay.
as someone can make it sound.
right,
Good.
but it was an issue in the R zones, which is
Good.
why we're sending it back.
Mr. Hanlon, we appreciate your comments, and
Thank you.
we will certainly get back to you. Give Mr. Neiman my best.
Yeah, tell Freddie I said hello, will you?
Mrs. Dixell, I think you also would like to be recognized?
It's almost golf season. I'll run into Fred soon on the links.
Barbara Dixell, Howell Township. That's what I wanted to address was, also the approvals and what's going to happen to homes that are already built. Again, I don't think it's fair, and I want to ask you, again, I've asked this question before, did you notice people? Did you send notices out other than printing 3 notices in 3 newspapers to tell people you're changing these things, to notice them personally?
Mrs. Dixell, a notification did not go out to every resident of the municipality.
Well, you know what? Then you're creating a very unfair, people are being treated unfairly by this because their properties are going to change, their values are going to change, and they're not going to know it. And they're going to want to come in and do something, and going to get whammed. They're going to have to go before the zoning board. Ain't fair. You people really need to do your due diligence, and you need to have conscience and notify the people of this town when you're going to change zoning, especially when all of this stuff is going to change on existing houses. It ain't fair. And I would request that you pull the ordinance until you fix it and do the grandfathering. And I want to ask you all about, also, what about the wetlands? What's going to happen now if you do clustering and there's wetlands on the property? Do the homeowners wind up paying taxes on the wetlands or whatever?
Mayor,
Mr. Janetzky, go ahead.
the first issue with wetlands determines what's actually buildable. So they would be required to identify the wetlands on a property as part of the conventional subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole idea with the clustering lot averaging is to go beyond what the state requires in terms of protecting wetlands. Sometimes things are important for other environmental reasons. So it gives the board that flexibility to really protect environmental features. It actually specifically directs them. And I do want to, Ms. Dixell would have no way of knowing this, but based on her suggestion to the governing body, which you directed me to take out an ad in those papers, I would tell you that the volume of calls to my office has increased substantially.
Mm-hmm.
And I've met with probably 24 residents who just show up at my office since that time. And it's a pleasure to do so and to explain the process. And I think it was a good suggestion. And for what it's worth, Ms. Dixell, I think the word of mouth is getting the message out. And I think we're certainly taking our time with these.
Mr. Janetzky, Mayor, Council, I don't accept it. I'm sorry. I think you have a moral obligation as well as a legal obligation, and it's my opinion that you need to notice every single homeowner in these zones that are going to be affected by a change. Any kind of property you own, I wouldn't want to have to come in and find out, man, I'm in non-compliance and I'm going to get fined by the township. What the hell for? Why did I buy the piece of
Barbara, I would
property?
just ask you, the last meeting and this one, just to watch your language, please.
I'm sorry. I mean, it's,
You know, and I can't
it's
speak
very
for the
upsetting.
council.
It's
I ca-
really
Barbara,
upsetting to a
I can't speak for the
homeowner.
council, but you constantly say that we don't notice, and it was
Did
on
you
your
notice
advice
these
that
people?
we put it in every
A
newspaper, in all three
newspaper.
official
But
newspapers.
what about people who don't get the newspapers? What about people who aren't reading the newspapers? I really think the council has an obligation to the citizens of the town to notify them if their property is going to be affected by any of these zoning changes. I'm sorry, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dixell. Anyone else who'd like to be heard in this ordinance? Come on up, Mr. Smith. Sure, go.
Don Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road. Something just came to my mind, and I might have overlooked it, but when this was talked about in the planning stages, it required that a letter of interpretation be submitted to the planning board with the yield map. Is that still in here? Does anybody know off the top of their head?
Mr. Smith, what do you, we want to make sure that the LOI gets there when the yield map's submitted, not
Right,
as a
because
condition
that's-
of approval?
Right, because
Okay.
you could end up, giving more units in your.
I understand. I think the mayor probably
I
understands that, too.
I thought I remembered the talk about that they would require an LOI before clustering, rather than, sometimes you make it conditional on
Right,
a
it's on a
regular.
submission waiver list.
But in this particular case, it would drive the whole plan in any clustering format.
Mr. Janetzky, can you comment
Just
on that?
the extent to which the ordinance comments, it says the concept plan shall be in sufficient detail to permit the planning board to make an informed decision as to the subdivision, satisfying all ordinance requirements and in a form that would be acceptable to the planning board as a conventional subdivision without the need for any lot area or lot dimension variances or exceptions to subdivision design standards, and that typically encompasses state requirements. Because an engineer won't sign off on a subdivision plan without those documents. Well, but no, to answer your question, Don, it doesn't specifically call for that.
You know, I'd like to see this ordinance get in, but I think we're starting to see where it's going to need a little follow-up tweaking. I agree with something that was said before about farm use. I don't like to see the farm use held to such strict impervious coverage. I think that goes against our right to farm, not so much the ordinance itself, but our intent. And now again, I don't feel comfortable without actually spelling it out that they have to have an LOI, because I think any of you that have served on the planning board know that in most cases, it's conditioned upon the LOI, their approval. But if you don't have that LOI when you present that conceptual map, your yield map, you could be looking at an erroneous number of homes.
Mayor, an LOI is for the benefit of the public. It stands for a letter of interpretation. What that means is the applicant goes out and he sets the perimeters of the wetlands and the wetland buffers, and then submits that to the state, and the state issues a letter verifying that called an LOI. As I agree, Don, that language should be clarified and added in there, but I just can't see how a professional could give an opinion as to whether or not a lot yield is reasonable without having that in the first place.
Well, you know, I've seen it done. That's the thing. In fact, I think there was just one quite recent that was done without the applicant having gotten his LOI. Well, let's see, I remember the attorney for it, but I can't recall the name of the case. I think Mr. Howell knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I think usually what we hear is when the LOI is, and the argument that we get from applicants, attorneys, and engineers is, well, we submitted for it 9 months ago, we still haven't heard. So what happens then is the applicant says, well, we believe, according to the way we've delineated the wetlands, that we'll be able to get X number of houses. If the LOI says we can't, then we'll come back.
Right.
So I think what Mr. Smith is trying to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you can't even go to the planning board until you have your LOI.
Right, and you know, in the case of that one that we're talking about, and in so many, he argued that he started this case, presented the case in 2003. But he didn't submit his LOI until late of 2006. I sit on the Environmental Commission. I see these applications. Why so long? Okay, it's a lengthy process, but so is getting any approval before, you know, to get a case before the planning board, before he's deemed complete.
As well,
So-
maybe maybe the language that we ought to contemplate down next is, see, once the LOI is requested, the state really doesn't have the resources to go out and do an investigation, and these issues become the developers and towns typically fight these issues when the town sends out its own professionals to say, no, here's where I think the wetlands line is. So I think, you know, taking into account that it does take 9 months, maybe the provision ought to actually be that the escrow accounts cover our professionals going out to determine where they think the wetlands line is.
See, actually, you know, I do differ with you there, because being on the Environmental Commission, having 13 years on there, I've dealt with the DEP, and as long as we comment, and when I say we, the Environmental Commission, they're very good. There have only been a couple out of hundreds that I know they have not bothered to go out. If we point out where we believe the wetlands to be, if there's a contradiction between our report and the applicants, they do go out, because we call them up and we verify later on. Did you actually go out And they'll give us the name. In fact, our present chairman actually works for the DEP in stream encroachment. He can't do Howell Township, but he's got the connections to know whether or not they're being followed up on.
Okay, but you would admit, not on their own initiative. Typically, a letter from you then would.
Yeah,
spark that.
you have to drive the, and actually, quite often we will request they go out and do a site-specific inspection because we feel that there's a great discrepancy. And it really doesn't happen that often that there's a discrepancy. But when there is, they have been very good about coming out and checking. And really what you got to watch is not just the wetlands itself, but the buffer determination on those wetlands. And those buffers can reduce the number of homes. The wetlands may even be off-site. They may be adjacent to this property. But if there's a 50-foot or a 75-foot buffer, it can come onto the applicant's property, and you don't know it if he hasn't submitted and received an LOI. So these are just things that I worry about, because I've seen a couple cases where they've gotten by the planning board without having obtained an LOI. And we weren't so much concerned about the wetlands on site, but we were concerned about buffers off site.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Smith.
Mayor, with respect to the issue that the gentleman who is the farmer also raised, we think we might be able to address this now without making a substantive change to the ordinance. On page 7, we provide for the farmland preservation option, and under the ordinance we spell out, so if you put your property in farmland preservation, what are the bulk standards going to be? And they're much more generous than the conventional or cluster for residential subdivisions. So it speaks directly to the farm. I think we can change this to read farm preservation parcels or existing farms. And I think that addresses that matter. And then that changes the impervious coverage limits to building coverage of 10% and overall lot coverage to 15%.
You'd like to be recognized? Come on up, Mr. Nansen.
Come on up. You'll be here all night, man.
I will be very quick, Mr. Wood.
No, we're going to be here all night anyway. It had nothing to do with you, sir.
Go ahead,
We
Mr.
were
Nansen.
the other night. No, it does in a way. and I
Mr. Nansen, if you
appreciate
would
that.
just reintroduce yourself for the record, please.
Wendell Nansen, 40 Yellowbrook Road. Thank you very much. That would help out a lot. But I'm not necessarily talking about the existing farm. I'm talking about a person that wishes to come here, say from Staten Island, comes down here, he wants to buy a farm. Okay, in Howell, there's not very many farms left here in Howell. There are a few, but if he buys a piece of property that's got a house, maybe say 10 acres, 11 acres, he's going to be held within the new zoning because he's not going to qualify to be under an existing farm. So you're going to make him go to the zoning board and spend an enormous amount of money to be able to have his hay barn or his, what I'm talking about is somebody who wants to take 10 acres and kind of preserve it as a farm, regardless if they own it now or if it's in the future a person to come in that's going to buy a big piece of property. It addresses the existing farm, but it doesn't address a new farmer coming in.
Mm-hmm.
That's
okay.
Yeah,
Well,
Mr.
it
Nansen,
does,
I would
actually.
kind of imagine that anybody with that kind of property is already listed as a farm and operating as a farm, so you'd be buying a pre-existing condition.
not necessarily. I know several large tracts, the property that people have, they don't farm it. They're under woodlands management, say. But woodlands management is only good for X amount of years until it has to revert to, a regular tax roll.
Right.
Okay, so now you're dealing with properties that's under a woodlands management, but you got a person that comes in that wants to turn that into a farm for his kids to ride horses. They want to grow, potato patch out there or whatever. It's for them to have shelter for their animals, their equipment, everything. They're gonna have to go to the zoning board.
Okay, what if we added this simple sentence at the end of number 5? It shall also apply to existing farms and other proposed farms in the ARE zones.
Okay. Yeah, that will cover that, huh?
Okay, is that enough of a change where that may require us to have to re-advertise, Mr. Bongiovanni? Are you comfortable that we're able to make that change this evening?
You can make that change this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nansen. Or anyone else who'd like to be heard on the specifics of this matter? Okay, Mr. Magid?
Yes, I'm Abe Maggot, 89 Mariners Cove. And by the way, in keeping with the stipulation of the council's attorney, Mr. Bongiovanni, I want you all to know now that I'm addressing the entire council, the mayor and the council. And when I speak, anybody who then speaks to me, I will then speak directly to that person, whether it's the mayor who speaks to me, doesn't make any difference, or a councilman. And this will apply from now on ad infinitum.
So let it be written, so let it be done, Abe.
In the stars. Remember, Rascals, Route 35, lots of money. All right, please turn now to page 3. I want to refer to page 3. On page 3, item 1, I'll save time by simply going for the moment, doesn't matter, it can be anyone, to the ARE6 district. There shall be 0.167 units per acre. Okay. Now, what does that mean? That means that on the minimum that you can have for an ARE6, I believe, is 6 acres.
What was
Would
that?
somebody care to tell me what that means?
I believe if you do the math, that means that you can fit one house per every 6 acres.
Or every 6 acres, okay. Now, when you go to open lands, if you now go down to B,
What's that, what page, sir?
page 3, which is what I said
Okay.
before.
Oh, down under open
All right,
lands. I'm
don't yell
sorry.
Okay, which I said before.
I'm sorry, sir.
No, it's okay.
Are you adjusting me?
We're all human. We're all human. Oh, I'm not undressing you, I'm addressing you. Okay, let's stay with it. Stay with the point.
Okay, what's your specific point?
Okay, no, wait a minute, I'm just, now, if you go down to B, it says that in the case of an ARE6, but it can be, it doesn't matter, all percentages, 75% of the tract is located for open land use, which means that you would take the 6 acres down to 2 acres. Am I right about that? Or no? Or, yeah, or even less. 75% of no, it's 25% of 6 acres, 1.5 acres, whatever it is. So when somebody puts that house, it won't be on 6 acres. If we apply this, it'll actually be on 1.5 or maybe 2 acres. Am I right on that?
That's the theory, yeah.
No, that's what it
Yeah,
specifies, not a theory. We have an ordinance here.
Yeah, well,
That's-
yes.
Yes, okay. And in the same way, on an ARE4 district, which is 4 acres, it's cut in the open land by 60%, and therefore 40% is left, but you still get, in other words, that house will now be on, again, about 1.5 acres, or less than 2 acres, because it's going to be cut
2
down
acres.
by 60%. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay, that's very specific. Okay, so I just want to know, when you have this open lands, and it's nice, it's great, for large areas like ARE3, ARE4, or I'm sorry, ARE6, what happens now on open land when the density is far greater? It's not an ARE4, it's not an ARE6, I don't know what you want to call it. You call it ARE1, I don't care. If you start to apply the same logic, because we like to have these open spaces, you're going to have what amounts to a much higher density than is intended for. Let's say, is ARE1 1 acre? Will somebody tell me?
Yes.
Right, it's a...
1 acre.
Right,
All right? All right.
correct.
If on ARE1, you start to, for open lands, you're obviously going to have a house, somebody's very funny there, laugh with him.
Hey, I just need to interrupt you for a moment. Mayor, if I could ask the manager a question. In keeping with our protocols now, since it's after 11, do we need a motion to continue the meeting?
I apologize, you do. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion. Continue the meeting.
All right, we have a motion, we need a second.
Mayor, if I could just ask one more question. Do we need to do it in time increments?
I think
No, this is
I
not time.
believe-
No, not
This
against
is not-
you,
this-
Abe.
No,
is
Mayor,
another you,
Abe,
you,
not
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
Do we need to make motions to
Yes, our
increment?
policy suggests we need to specify an
it
extended
does, you
time.
need to specify, otherwise it's 15 minutes, unless you specify
All right,
otherwise.
how about, make the motion, just maybe indicate till midnight?
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting till midnight.
All right, we have a
Mayor-
motion, we need a second.
Mayor,
Second.
We have a motion and a second under remarks, Mr. Chinesky?
not on the motion.
Okay,
Sorry.
any comments or remarks on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, just designate with aye.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to
Okay.
go
Yeah,
to
I just,
midnight.
I wonder why, because I'll be commenting on the other two items also. On this one here, as I say, if we go down in how many units there are per acre, let's say, maybe it's an area, it could be 2 units per acre. I'm just picking numbers.
Where are you getting the numbers from, though, Abe?
Whoa,
We're
no,
lost.
on your master plan, you have much higher density than you have .17, and you're now going to open land. You have areas where you have 4 units per acre, from Chuck Newcomb's, master.
Don't worry about Chuck Nukem.
All right,
We're
forget
dealing
it,
with
forget
this
it.
one.
Stay with this, okay.
Thank you.
Well, my question is, I'll raise it with the other two, because I can get the answer now, or I'll be raising it with
Abe, why
the...
don't we get to your point?
I tried it before, I'll try it again. If you have a higher density,
Okay?
so that you might have 6 units per acre or 4 units per acre, wherever that area is, you're asking me, Mike, to point out, you don't want me to go over there and look for it
Abe,
now.
I don't know where you're getting the math. I don't know where you're getting the numbers.
In your master plan,
Mayor?
as shown to me, we have 4 units per acre.
Mr.
We have more.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to try and move this in a
Yeah,
direction that could be
great.
helpful. This ordinance talks about, I believe, creating a zone that would specify that there can be 1 unit to every 4 acres. Is that correct?
Correct, Mayor. This only deals with large lots.
Fine.
Yeah.
I will
Okay.
draw my discussion now, and it'll enter into the others. Great.
Thank you.
Fine.
Any other comments from the public, either for or against the final adoption of this particular ordinance? All right, seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing on this particular ordinance, and I would call the council's attention to this. I'd ask a member of the council to please make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that ordinance number 0-079,
Need a motion to amend.
I was going to make it subject to the amendments that have been proposed. I need to amend it first, or?
Well, we just need someone to make a motion to approve the ordinance with the amendments as noted, and perhaps, Mr. Bongiovanni, you could read into the record the specific verbiage.
That's what I was going to do.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended. Terrific. All right, we have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional comments or remarks on the motion as amended?
So what are we putting into it, just so I'm clear about that?
We are going to add an indication that the farmland preservation option, the standards that it provides, that we're going to indicate that it shall also apply to existing farms and other proposed farms in the ARE zones,
Okay?
with, an understanding that that might have to be cleaned up as we
Okay.
digest it a little bit.
Are we going to address grandfathering in the amendment?
No, that should be treated as a separate,
I
that
think
that
on
would be
the-
a substantive change that has to be treated separately.
If we were to try and do that tonight, we'd have to
Okay.
table it, but you're going to get
Yeah.
back to us with your
Yeah.
recommendations on the grandfathering issue.
Yes, sir.
Anything
That-
else, Mr. Pangiavani?
Might be able to just do that as a separate ordinance altogether.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms.
And,
Dalton?
Mr. Mayor, my motion was also that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 3/2307 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
Absolutely. Does the seconder agree with that additional commentary? Who seconded it?
I did, I'll second.
You're
I
comfortable
agree.
with that? All right. Any final comments? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, I just want to remind the council
like
that
doing
we
it
were
back.
so eager to get into the ordinances that we actually skipped over our consent agenda. Pleasure of the council, we could merely continue with 8A2 and 8A3 and then just go back and quickly move on consent agenda.
now.
You want to do the consent now?
Do the consent now.
Not a problem. All right, just bear with us, members of the public, for a moment. Call everyone's attention to the consent agenda items, and as a reminder, we have added on a variety of items, including 9B11 through 9B18. So, we have obviously workshopped these particular items. First, does anyone wish to have a separate vote on any of the consent agenda items? All right, so hearing no separate vote requests on the consent agenda items, including all of the, I believe there are motions as well, two particular motions.
The motions I didn't list under consent, I
Yeah, because
believe we
they're,
have to make the
appointments.
appointments.
All right, so are there any questions or comments with respect to any of the consent agenda? If there's not, I'd ask member of the council to make a motion.
I just have one very quick comment,
Sure.
and that is that we, of course, did the public hearing of citizens before we voted on these.
Right.
And also, I wanted to comment that I believe that this week's agenda was very, very detailed in the descriptions of what these resolutions were. The explanatory statements were great.
Terrific, thank you, Ms. Norton, they were. Okay, I'd ask member of the council to please introduce a motion.
So moved.
Mayor,
We have a motion? Mr.
I'll
Howell?
second.
Mr. Howell seconded. There's a motion to second on consent agenda items. Any additional comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please, on the consent agenda items.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, with respect, actually, we would normally do the 9 Cs at this time as well. Would the council like to entertain any appointments for the alternate position to Farmers Advisory and the alternate positions to Preservation Task Force? Are there any nominations to be entered tonight?
I would like to table this to the next meeting if we could.
All right, we have a motion to table 9C1 and 9C2 until our next regular meeting. Is there a second?
Mayor, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any remarks on tabling? Hearing none, roll call on tabling 9C1 and 2, please.
Yes.
Pardon me, Mr. Dixell?
Sorry, it's supposed to be public comment.
There were before.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on tabling 9C1 and 9C2. I'd ask for a roll call, please, on 9C1 and 9C2, tabling them.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, and we'll come back and revisit 10-1 and 10-2. So now I'll just call everyone's attention back to a continuation of our public hearing on ordinances. 8A2 is Article 00715, titled Growth Share. Everyone pull out our copy. 8A2, accordingly, ordinance number 00715, introduced and passed on its first reading on March 6, 2007, and published according to law, is now being taken upon further consideration in a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of March 9, 07 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance was posted on the bulletin board. Has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, County of Monmouth, and State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 entitled Land Use of the General Ordinance of the Township of Howell in order to amend Article 23 entitled Uniform Growth-Based Affordable Housing Production.
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting to members of the public for a hearing with comments that may be for or against the final adoption of this ordinance. Anyone would like to be heard, please come forward and give us your name and address for the record. Mr. Magid, you're up first.
Hey, Magid, 89 Mariners Cove. All right, turn please to page 3.
Okay.
Now, the first paragraph, I'm going to skip over because it says 1 unit for every 8 new market rate residents. But the second paragraph talks about an area in need of redevelopment. I sort of assume that doesn't apply to us, 1 unit for 5 new market rate residential units. Could that ever apply to us in any way that you can picture in Howell?
An area in need of redevelopment.
Where are you at, sir?
Oh, sure, page 3.
Okay.
Second paragraph.
Mr. Chudnansky, would you like to, go ahead.
Second paragraph.
I would say this is a fairly standard growth share ordinance that's adopted in many communities, and I know that the word area in need of redevelopment is something that needs to be handled with a great deal of care in terms of public perception. But I would just, I do want to note that, well, I don't want to answer for you, but clearly you don't want to answer a statement like ever and answer for a governing body that might be in place, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now that's dealing with an area that's been, gutted by fire or something.
Okay.
So the word never may not be appropriate for the governing body.
So I understand. You're not ruling out the idea.
Where, sir? Where on page
Second
3?
paragraph, page 3.
Right here?
You're not ruling out the idea that we could become responsible for every 5 new market rate residents. We could become responsible, that we would then have to have 1 affordable unit. Am I right? This could happen.
I'm not, Mr. Magid, I'm not following.
Okay,
No, we would be responsible. This says,
Here-
if there's an, if
This is an ordinance,
if
right?
there's a redevelopment zone,
Here we are.
that
I'll
has
restate it.
residential-
According
Mr.
to
Magid,
the
wait,
language.
Mr. Magid.
Okay,
Ms. Dalton has the floor.
right. I thought I was answering her.
the builder's going to be responsible to build those units on site.
That's right. But what I'm saying is here in Howell, when this builder comes along, for every 5, not 8, but 5 market rate units. A unit can be whatever it is, doesn't have to be a single-family house, units. There, Howell would now have to, by this ordinance, accept 1 affordable unit for the 5 market rateable units. Am I saying it right, according to this ordinance?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
now, okay.
Yes.
Now, please, let's go to page 6, the bottom of page 6, bottom of page 6.
Okay.
And here is also what our ordinance is saying. A 1-bedroom affordable dwelling unit shall be not less than 600 square feet. All right. Item 2, a 2-bedroom affordable dwelling unit shall be not less than 800 square feet. Now, let's think for a moment what this ordinance we would have to comply with a builder's request. I just said from page 3, it is possible that for every 5 units, we would then have to allow, well, let's say a 2-bedroom affordable unit shall be not less than 800 square feet. The reason I say 800 square feet, 2 bedrooms, you certainly could have 1 child, maybe 2. The rateable on an 800 square foot house compared to the houses in general, as I know them to be here, I don't mean the big mansions, just, I think mine's about 1,700 square feet, others. The rateable is going to be very small in compared to called a non-affordable dwelling. Were that to happen, I'm not talking 20 years, we don't know, in the future, this ordinance would then allow, we would have to allow, in conformance with this ordinance, that possibly as little as 5 units, and the units themselves might not be mentioned. Let's say they're townhouses, whatever they are. But when that takes place, according to this, you could then have an affordable unit occupied with 1 or maybe even 2 children whose rateable is only 800 feet. What I'm saying is, and this is the question I have to ask, is this some kind of a statewide obligation about the 600 and 800, or even a 3-bedroom apartment, or not apartment, 3-bedroom unit, certainly there should be children there, not less than 1,000 square feet. Now you could have 2 children, maybe 3. From where does appear, is there anything mandatory that these figures have to be this, or can they be made higher?
They are the minimum standards established by code.
These are the minimum standards established by the Council of Affordable Housing.
Correct.
All right, so okay, I understand. So what we're saying here is, both by the Affordable Council's establishment, if I go back to page 3, we have the second paragraph, which says, for 5 units, you have to provide an affordable one, and also this council, which, can I ask Mr. Zanetsky, is this a state thing? It's a state thing?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
And the state stipulates, say, for example, that if we go to page 6, 800 square feet, which would be a very, very low rateable, obviously, which would have children, or the 1,000 square feet, still a fairly low rateable, could have any number. It just seems to me, I want to go on record of this, okay, if it's not the fault of the township. It is an abominable formula for disaster, not in 20 years from now, but in the very near future, since housing, again, has become so expensive, or probably remain that way, most likely. Usually it dips down a little and goes right back up again. I've been here 40 years, it's happened that way. This ordinance by state, I went on record in Howell Township, that by state mandate, this is a formula for disaster. And citizens here have said, some people living here, maybe senior citizens, I don't know, can hardly afford to live here, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. I heard it mentioned tonight, that, and I don't know what a period of time, we're already obligated to something like 6,000 units.
No.
No, okay, well, I heard a number, 6,200.
That's Jackson. That's not Howell. That's
Oh, delighted. I read the Asbury Park today for Jackson. Well, whatever our obligation is, yeah, you know, they're over there. I don't worry about it.
All right, well, thank you for your comments, Mr. Mayor.
No, I just want to answer this gentleman. I was talking with him. When you said to me before that, Mr. Zelinski said, this is an obligation, and we can't do anything about it. Will Howell Township put in the record my statement here that I, as a homeowner here, speaking for myself, maybe it applies to others, that this statement, this obligation by the statement, by the state, is a total formula, I want those words, for disaster for the homeowners living here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Magid. All right, who else would like to be heard on this particular ordinance? Anyone else who'd like to be heard? Yes, ma'am. Just please give us your name and address for the record, of course, please.
Good evening.
Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
Did we just appoint you to the Ordinance Review Committee?
Yes.
Is she allowed
Is
to
that
speak
going to be a, yeah, that's a big
Speaking as a,
conflict.
wait.
Well, he's speaking
She's
as a
allowed to
resident.
speak as a citizen. She's not speaking on behalf of the Ordinance
think,
Review
uh,
Committee.
Speaking on
We
behalf
haven't
of...
even had a meeting, so I
should
don't
ask
even
the
know what we're
attorney
doing.
for his
Oh,
opinion.
Yeah,
sorry.
we better,
Okay. Mr. Howell, she rightly points out that they haven't even had a meeting yet, but I really don't think it's a conflict. In fact, I think probably it's closer to her, what the committee will be doing. For example, if they want to bring up a change that they propose, or the elimination of an ordinance they propose, it may be the very same one that...
Ernie, you got your button now?
Yeah, it's not only not a conflict, I guess what I'm saying, I'm taking a long time to say it, is it's very complementary to what their mission, I think, or their stated mission is supposed to be, for them to be speaking on proposed ordinances, so I see no problem with it.
Okay, good. If you just introduce yourself for
Yeah,
the benefit
I
of the
just wanted to
public.
make that clear.
But she is pointing out that she's speaking for herself tonight, too.
Good. You are.
Donna Miller, 174 Herbertsville Road.
Welcome, Mrs. Miller.
You're not allowed to resign.
I won't. And in fact, I just have a couple of comments, hopefully constructive criticisms. Let's see. I guess if we can just skip quickly to page 3, where the developer of all net new residential development of 8 or more residential units is basically going to be obligated under this this ordinance. I think we need to just sort of supplement that, because I want to know what happens to the guy who's only proposing 6 or 7 units. I don't think there's a clear
Mr. Chinesky,
stipulation that says, and any portion thereof.
Right, I believe we see that at the planning board, and if it's below the 8 or above the 8, but it's a fraction thereof, they're required to contribute to the affordable housing fund, and that's already an ordinance that's on the books.
Right,
So
and
if
this
they're building
ordinance,
7,
this
they have
ordinance
to
is
put
designed to
7
supplement that
eighths.
requirement, so
Right.
let's keep it consistent.
Okay, we'll look at that.
The other question I had was, have we determined what the contribution is for the payment in lieu?
It's not. I think that is, there is a current one.
Yeah.
Right.
We have a current gross share ordinance that specifies what
Yeah,
that
doesn't
amount
it?
is.
But I don't recall.
Does
it.
164,000 sound right?
I don't know the number. I don't know. I don't recall what the
Actually,
number is.
if I remember now, COA tells us exactly what that unit can be.
Yeah, and by
Contribution
region,
can be.
correct?
Yeah, by region. That's a part of the ruling.
Okay. I've seen some ordinances integrate it, so that when you're trying to apply it, like,
Yeah.
you know, at the planning board, somebody can,
This is post-ruling.
I understand.
Right.
Everyone knows what ruling means, right? The bomb they dropped on our heads
Yep.
a
What's
few months
that?
ago.
Well, actually,
Maybe they don't.
Post-ruling is based on the, when you mean the court-imposed
Court-
resolution?
Right,
and-
the January decision by the court
Yeah.
doing away with many of the provisions of how Round 3 obligations were determined. They also address that matter.
Right.
Okay. What other comments do you have?
Just a clarification that the money goes into an affordable housing trust fund?
That's correct.
And that was it?
Great. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you for doing your homework already.
She gets
Anyone
nervous
else?
every time she comes
Going
up.
to take Mr. Lebrio's chair.
Anyone else who'd like to make a comment on this particular ordinance? Anyone else who'd like to make a comment? All right, seeing no one else, I'm going to close the public portion on this particular hearing. I'd ask a member of the council to please proceed in making a motion.
I gotta go backwards.
Motion to ordinance number 0-07-15 be finally passed and adopted, and notice of its passing and adoption be published in the 3/2307, issued the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
We have a motion, we need a second, please.
I'll second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any additional comments or remarks? Ms. Dalton?
a number. I thought that by doing this, we were touting that we were going to require developers to do on-site, build within the town, don't send it out.
this specific ordinance doesn't speak that broadly. It doesn't set that policy as you stated it, but it says build on site. Now, in terms of sending out and other things, that deals with other aspects of our fair share plan, our past obligations, and other numbers that may come down to us as a result of COA now revising its numbers. But the recommendation from the COA attorney and from COA itself, our COA attorney and COA itself, is if you planned on doing a fair share ordinance, it's in your plan, you should proceed and do that, because it sort of stops the, it's a sort of a stop the bleeding ordinance in terms of accumulating more and more numbers.
But maybe I misunderstood the meetings with COA council and everything else. I thought we were talking about, we weren't going to be able to send, no, we never said that?
No, ma'am.
We never said, not that on new projects, we're still going to be allowing developers to send the obligation to another town or build it someplace else within the town.
No, we are requiring them to build in town on their site or contribute to us, and with that money, we can, you know, in a smaller case or in a case where you can't build on site, we'll take that money. And what's in dispute now is, or being debated in Trenton, is the status of these RCAs, but presumably we'd be able to use this money for that or to do a municipal sponsored project.
No, I mean, I understand the funding part, but I mean, I'm just looking at page 3, and I'm reading here where it's not practicable to
try that
do so.
again.
It says practicable. I would say practical, but anyway, where it's not practical to do it on site, we may develop the builder, the board can give the builder the option of developing off-site within the township or providing through a payment in lieu of construction.
Right?
Then that's what we've been doing for years, right?
Yes. But no, we haven't been requiring construction on site.
Okay. I mean, I would just think if we're going to, I am not very comfortable with this carve-out language. It seems to me that it may be able to swallow the
I think,
the whole.
Mr. Chinesky, if I'm correct, the planning board is going to require that the first option is build it on site. It's going to be a relief to build off-site, or where there's 9 units or 10 units, then that money will have to go into that fund. So they're going to be required to build on site, but you can't require a commercial developer to build on site.
No, I understand that. Then I would propose that we consider, instead of using the word practicable to do so,
I think
that we
maybe
call it
that
a
should have been
hardship.
practical or able. Is there an or missing in there?
There may be proposals where the planning board, for very good reasons, such as, let's say, soil conditions or environmental concerns, really does not want that density or the septics there. And there might be some other compelling reasons that would direct the developer in another direction.
Or if the developer only has a lot, a yield of 8.
Right, and he buys a...
So then the 9th one would have to be the affordable. So you can't require him to build the affordable on site if he's just at 8.
Mr. Mayor, one
Please.
other, on page 5, paragraph 2, density bonus may be granted in the sole discretion of the planning board
Yes.
for construction of affordable housing units on site. I want to know why we're giving the density bonus out.
Okay. In my notes to mention this, this is the one item that the planning board commented on. And as a matter of fact, what the attorney communicated to me was that there wasn't a comfort level leaving that strictly with the planning board. So what we have to do is come back with an ordinance that refines that a lot more for the planning board.
You mean,
In terms of giving them the sort of carte blanc to set the density bonus. They're looking for standards and guidance with specifically what that means. And so that'll be in a form of a follow-up ordinance.
Right, and I think what my thought was Thursday night would be the same thing, where a developer can only build 8 units on site. Well, we'll give you another lot so you can build the affordable on site.
Right.
So, where it's practicable.
How do we address Mrs. Dalton's concern with respect to the phrase practicable, and is there something alternative that can be used that does not require us to have to re-advertise, or do we need to pull this?
Mayor, I think we can make that a priority follow-up item. I think that we want to act quickly to conform with our fair share plan, okay, and get as many of the pieces and puzzle in place as possible.
Ms. Dalton, does that meet your satisfaction?
Yes, that's fine. And also with regard to the density bonus issue, you'll make it a priority too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any additional comments? We do have a motion and a second, I believe. Is that right? Yes. I can't recall. All right. Yes. Any additional comments from the council?
I'm going to make a comment and then give my vote. I think that, Mr. Chernecki said something a little earlier about everybody knows what the big bomb that was dropped on us was in January. And I don't think everybody knows. I don't think the town in general, most people know what COA is, what it's about. I don't think people have a clue. I'm an attorney, and I don't practice COA matters, and I still don't fully understand it very much. I know there are rumors, innuendo, people are very scared of what it means, and I think we need to do something to educate. And I mentioned Channel 77 before. I think we really need to do something to educate our township on exactly what affordable housing is. I slightly disagree with the mayor's comments at previous meetings about COA being a failed social experiment. I think that people who are people who are middle of the road income, people may need the ability to live in a great township like Howell Township. Everybody can't afford a 3,500 square foot house. And I just think that sometimes there's too much confusion over this issue, and people are scared of it for reasons which may or may not be correct. And I think it's our obligation as the governing body to educate people on what this is and make sure that we are doing things in a sound way. So I am going to vote yes, but I'm going to ask that we do something to educate the people about what COA is and why we have it, and what's discretionary and what's mandatory.
All right, any additional comments? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, the next item is 0713. This was introduced and passed on first reading on February 20th, 2007. It's published according to law and is now being taken upon for further consideration at a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of February 23rd is submitted. It's noted that a copy of the ordinance was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies are available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, County of Monmouth, amending Chapter 188 Land Use Ordinance to provide for a new zoning district entitled Planned Mixed Use District and rezoning certain lands into this district.
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting to members of the general public. Anyone who'd like to make comments for or against adoption of this ordinance, please come forward. Mrs. Smith, you are first. Come on up. Welcome.
Pauline Smith. At another time, I'd like to have a long discussion about COA and the damage it's done. Idea is good, but it's done a lot of damage. This particular ordinance, I understand this site comes about because of a court settlement. Am I not correct?
I wouldn't know that I would call it court. I think it's a COA mediated settlement. Correct.
Okay, but it is one of those settlements. Okay, it didn't touch the court then. then it does, then a lot
Hold on
of...
one second,
But
Mrs.
COA
Smith.
has the same standing as a court.
I understand that. I understand that. And then actually what I was going to say at another time does apply to this. Our first round was nothing but about 11 or 12 of these. And what it ended up being is an excuse for high-density zoning. There are so many, I don't want to waste your time, but I think you should know about it. There are so many very large, high-density developments in Howell Township that were the bonus, the fair market, so-called value, fair market units, and they didn't provide one single unit or one single penny for our COA. And I can show and tell you where they are, and because you're up there and need to deal with this, you should know. But this particular one, then it's a COA settlement. Does it apply to, or would it apply to any other site or any other application?
No, site-specific.
No.
Site-specific. I thought, I didn't have an opportunity to read it. I wanted to, but I didn't. I assume that, wanted to make it clear. Okay, about the particular ordinance itself, and from what I understand is in it, could we possibly try to, as we do at planning board, on particular applications, and I would like to see it on all actually, require that all buffers are in place before any development so as to limit the impact on the very large surrounding area? Is that a possibility? That's not in there, is it?
Technically, and I don't want to, mean to cut off debate in any way, but everybody should understand that essentially this ordinance, the form of it, was basically drafted as part of the settlement agreement. So I don't really think we could really live up to the terms of the agreement by changing the proposed ordinance.
Well, would you, would
We
it be
might be able to make
possible
an
to go back?
additional
Yeah.
ordinance after.
Right.
and-
To go back to the table and ask if they would do that because of the large, the very large impact on the surrounding area.
I think,
It
I think,
does-
I think we have to adopt this ordinance to comply with the agreement. And then if there are any subsequent ordinances, provided they did not defeat the purpose of the agreement or undermine it, you might have additional, an additional ordinance to address something of what you're talking about, so long as it didn't undermine or defeat the whole purpose of the agreement.
Hold on one second.
Mayor,
Mrs. Dalton, actually, Mr. Howell had the floor first.
I
then we'll
just
get
want
to
to
him.
know,
Sorry.
do they still have to go in front of the planning board? Or no? No?
Yes, they do, but
They
it's
don't need to
pre-
do a site plan application when
Yes,
this
they-
is done?
They
Yeah.
do need to do a site plan application.
But it's kind of restricted in a case like this.
Do you have a question, Mr.
Right,
comment, Mr.
Mrs.
Howell?
Smith, I actually spoke to the manager 2 weeks ago about coming up with an ordinance that would require that the buffers be taken off the yield map before the developer could come in with his application showing the houses, so that there's no more
It didn't
the
count.
50-foot buffers in the backyard. You have to do your
You're
backyard
right,
after
yeah.
your buffers are drawn out. So that's already being taken care of.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the buffers themselves be in place, be either left or built. In the applications over the years that we've gotten developers or applicants to do this, it makes a major difference to the pre-existing neighbors, to the people that
That's
are
what
there.
we're working on.
And that's why that's the only reason that I suggest it, because I had it happen to me. I know what an impact it is. And we have that great big buffer, the berm, but that was the very last thing that they did. So all that earth-moving equipment, all the back and forth, and our house just shook for 2 years, literally. And I'd hate to see anybody go through that. And I always took that to planning board with me, because having lived through it, I knew the impact that it would, and I know the impact that it is on the people that are there. And I was taught by developers as well as by planners and land use people and lawyers that everybody has rights, and you mitigate as much as you possibly can the impact on the existing residents, and that makes for good neighbors and a successful development. So I'd like to see that done if it possibly could be.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
Anyone, actually, Mr. Magid, you're next, and then Ms. Wisner. Come on up, Mr. Magid. You had your hand up next.
Yep. Mayor, I also have a response to some of Mr. Wisner's comments.
Terrific. Okay. Mr. Magid, come on up.
Come on,
Nope.
All right, I refer you now to the very beginning on page 1. It says, whereas the Township Council desires to preserve and protect significant open spaces.
Abe, you got to talk into the mic.
That's a new one.
Where do you live, sir?
I forgot. Pre-Alzheimer's. I'm entitled, 82 now, not 81. By the way, 1 out of 2 after 85, so you may get your wish in 3 years from now or
82,
something.
huh?
Fade away, slowly, like Joe McCarthy. All right, page 1. Whereas the Township Council desires to preserve and protect significant open spaces within the Township Council, particularly a large portion of the approximate 31-acre tract located along Route 9. How many acres from that 31 is going to be set aside that the township wants to retain for open space? Approximately. I don't need an exact figure.
I believe it was 17, sir.
17, thank you. So from the 31...
Excuse me? I believe 17.
All right, we can even slice it down the middle, approximately a half. Either way, another acre or 2 is not going to bug me. Okay, here we go. Now, from the approximately, sake of argument, we'll say 15 acres is left. I don't care, 14, 17, 15 acres is left. Since it's a planned mixed use, how much, I assume, of course, along Route 9, is going to be set aside for commercial? It does say here, minimum commercial square foot is 20,000 square feet per unit, but in terms of acreage, about how much is, from approximately the 15 acres that's left, about how much will be for commercial? Around numbers, 1 acre, 2 acre,
Mayor,
whatever.
it's not per unit, it's just a minimum of 20,000 square feet, and I think
In total?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, so in other words, if it's 20,000 square feet of commercial, I would say that's going to be a small part of the approximately 15 acres that they're going to be building units. Okay, is that a fair statement? All right, I'll go on. Now, I refer you to the bottom, the very bottom of the page, the last paragraph. It says, first, the need for housing in the township to meet the diverse needs of an aging population. Sounds like senior citizen to me. But then, the next sentence says, by providing a community for older persons, that still sounds like for senior citizens, and/or persons with or without children. Well, that vitiates every aspect in terms of what those units can be used for, because it could be for young families with children, as specified here. Nobody can say it can't be, because you're allowing it. Would be nice if it were for seniors, but it could be for young families. With or without, the needs of those not yet eligible for age-restricted housing can be met, all right? So their income is such that they don't fall under, but they're a young family. It says with children, okay. New construction designed to meet the physical needs of older citizens will enable our society to better serve these needs, but not necessarily so, because, again, that's totally vitiated by the last paragraph. Could be, but certainly doesn't have to be. And it says permits the recycling of existing housing stocks that was designed for the needs of young families to serve that need. I now call your attention to the fact that on something approximately maybe 14 acres, there'll be some units built, and they will be serving, at least as not more than implied, as stated here, for young families. Now, I refer you to page 3. Page 3, it does say, oh yeah, near the bottom, near the penultimate paragraph from the bottom. How's that, guys? All right. The maximum number of dwellings is 118. It says dwellings, doesn't say yet what they are. It says dwellings. Well, if I throw an 8 into that 118, I get approximately 15 affordable housing units. All right? Now I refer you to page 5. And it says, near the top, item 5, additional architectural requirements. Maximum height, 3 stories, including the garage level. That sounds an awful lot like condominiums, maybe even apartments. Certainly smallish units, and the 118, it's not specified how it's going to be divided up, could easily be, could be, possibly, simply an apartment house with condominiums, or a 3-story house. And again, for each one of those, for the 118, you have one affordable one. And the affordable one, as I mentioned before, can be pretty small and have quite a few children, 1,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms. Now I refer you to page 6. Item 5 says the affordable housing obligation for this tract is 18 affordable units. Well, I don't know. First grade, second grade math says should be 15 if there's 118 total dwellings. So I don't know how
Part of the
they...
agreement.
Yeah, well, why would,
Because 8 per affordable.
sir,
Yeah.
sir, the minimum, okay? Because in the negotiation, we got extra affordable units built by the builder.
Oh, it's more than 118? Is that what you're saying?
No. It
Well,
was
they're
100
building-
with 18.
118.
units.
118.
118 total.
Well, yeah, and yet this agreement with AST, we agreed to 18 rather than 15 affordable units.
Mayor, that also takes into effect the obligation that's generated by the commercial.
Correct.
Oh, the workers. In other words, you figured with 20,000 square feet of commercial space.
We contemplated the obligation that
What
the
was this
commercial
amount?
would generate.
This amount? Okay, I'll answer you. You contemplated. With 20,000 square feet, for the extra 3 affordable units, you have to have a minimum, at least 75 employees. Is that what we agreed to?
It's a state formula that breaks
State?
it down per, they assign a job per so many square feet, and there's a formula that
Well, and that
results in-
formula then is pretty specific, but what you're saying, for 20,000 square feet, for 3 more affordable units, they're saying there'll be 75 workers there. Wouldn't that be the formula? How many?
I don't recall it at this hour.
Well, no, but I
Specific
recall it. It
formula.
says 25 workers is 1 affordable unit. So if you have 3 extra affordable units, you have 75 workers. So we agreed for only a 20,000 square foot
Sure.
thing. Well,
Okay.
maybe it's so. I'm just asking.
It could very well be the case.
All right. Okay, now I'll, you know.
Do you have a specific question?
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor?
yeah, let's say. When you have this ordinance, which is meant for AST, it's also an ordinance that would have to apply for anybody else.
Absolutely not.
Why is that the
Absolutely not.
case?
This is a mediated settlement that speaks specific to the lot and blocks that are mentioned in this agreement. It has no bearing on any other project.
In other words,
Let me
okay,
finish.
I'm going to ask you
It
a
has
question.
no bearing on anything else other than AST and a mediated settlement
Okay.
as coordinated through the Council on Affordable Housing.
So what you're saying to me is, when you have a planned mixed-use district, PMU, if somebody else wanted to say, well, this is an ordinance that allows certain things, you could say no, and you wouldn't have to fight it in court.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Magid. Mrs. Wisner, you're next.
Oh. Don't you have to be at school very early tomorrow, Mrs. Whitner?
So I have the Optimist Club meeting at 7, the mayor will be on the road at 6.
That's right.
Hey, Mayor?
Very true. Good evening, Ms. Wisner. If you just give us your name and address, please.
Ilse Wisner, 376 Conover Street.
Ms. Wisner, would you just kind of tilt that closer to, there you go.
Is that fine? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get that? 376 Conover Street? Ilse Wisner. Okay, my concerns are about the buffers, and I just had some questions. Let's see, page number 3, at the bottom of the page, number 2, landscape buffers and setbacks. Landscape buffer of a minimum width. Can we add the words for season? Again, my experience has been that if things are not specified, they tend to not happen. I know that it's understood that we do 4-season buffers, but again, if you don't specify, you can debate it.
Well, maybe you can do that at the planning board level, but the...
Well, at the planning board level, it becomes an issue of do you want to or don't you want to, or can you or can't you?
But-
If it's not in the ordinance,
But we can't really change the...
then why are we having a public hearing
because
if there's absolutely...
We have to hear all the comments.
I'm sorry, that's an absolute farce. If we can't make, if we're, it's silly for us to sit here until midnight to make comments when those comments are not being heard. I understand what you're saying, Ernie, but the bottom line is, if my comments are worthless and they're not being heard tonight, then why am I sitting here and why am I here even?
I don't think they're worthless.
I think the fact that, it's our policy in this district is a 4-season buffer. And I don't see what the big deal to put those 2 simple words in, 4-season. Otherwise,
Mrs. Whitney, I can guarantee you that Mr. Panic will be all over this developer about this 4-season buffer. And they would rather comply with Mr. Panic and a 4-season buffer than not comply with it.
and Mr. Howell, I appreciate what you're saying, and I've sat with you on the planning board, but again, everything pretty much becomes later. If it isn't in the ordinance, this is what's going to
Mr.
be
Bongiovanni,
upheld.
do we really believe that something as basic as this, I mean, we're not asking them to change a definition, that this could be an issue if we put in 4-season?
I did not draft the ordinance, but I did read the agreement.
Right.
And it's very specific that this is the ordinance you're supposed to pass. It's not supposed to be like a sample ordinance or,
Am I allowed to talk?
some suggestions. Of course you are.
Am I allowed to talk about the mediation?
You can now.
It's over, right?
It's over.
Listen, he definitely spoke about putting a 4-season buffer there because he mentioned doing a basketball court because he was not happy about some things as a buffer in the 100-foot. He was going to put a basketball court. There was exact words.
And I'm sure that was right next to my house.
So why couldn't we, and he said it as a joke, okay, but also, it was a very testy time. All right, let's just leave it at that. I don't want to get into the whole thing. I would like to see if we could ask the builder to put it in.
Could we, if Mr. Bongiovanni, your opinion is we can't alter this, could we not follow this up with a letter that says we've passed this resolution, but you need to understand.
Ordinance.
Ordinance, rather, I'm sorry. Here are some very specific expectations on our part. And you need to understand, we would like to get this confirmation back from you in writing, that. And we list out what these specific things are. And we're going to put them on record. This is exactly what we expect you to do. I mean, they could write back and say no, but I can't imagine something, to put in a 4-season buffer, they would have an objection. You have a comment, Mrs. Dalton?
Well, that's why I said
Are we
that
under a deadline to pass this tonight?
basically it's pretty close to the deadline. I'm not sure the exact date, Tom.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
but
sure.
we're approaching the deadline. I don't know the exact date. But it was, I think it was, we had 50 days to adopt.
50 days to adopt, which would be very close.
It's tight.
Any reply to what the mayor just
We
said?
could write a letter. I don't know. what, I can't guarantee what that would accomplish. I would really prefer to ask COA counsel that, unfortunately, it's not here. Again, if four-season buffers are like a permitted element of planning, I don't see why, under our other ordinances, why this should be read separately from the rest of our ordinances.
Because everything else is being read separately from all of our ordinances.
No, the things that are specifically different, that differ from the ordinance, then I'd say, yeah, you've got to abide by what's in this ordinance.
That's a good
But
point.
if it's just not covered by the ordinance, then I think it could be permissible under your other ordinances.
Right, I'm thinking this, it specifies the minimum width of the buffer and so forth, but when it comes to the design of the buffer, the reviewers will then reference 188.7 with respect to the design of buffers.
Don't forget, technically speaking, I mean, the council normally doesn't have the same planning, we're not here to make a subdivision, so I would think that they anticipate that the planning board is going to have a role. And they can only grant a subdivision pursuant to the rest of our ordinances. So, such ordinances that are not inconsistent.
And do we have
with
a
the agreement.
buffer ordinance?
We do.
And how well is it spelled out?
I don't know that I can quote it.
It's pretty well, it's extensive.
Extensive enough to indicate four-season buffer?
I
And the
think
types
so,
of
yeah.
plans that have to be approved by the
I'll make you a
Mr.
copy.
Panic?
I'll make you a copy of it.
Well, I mean, no, aside from the copy, I'd like to know today and go home that our buffer ordinance does dictate a four-season buffer and that it has to meet the plants that are actually being used, have to meet the approval of Mr. Panic.
For beating the mediation, Mrs. Worcester, I believe that he will do it.
Oh, I believe they will too. I mean, I have no
and we
reason
can
to
fight
believe they
for it.
won't, but I also want to be assured that the town has something in the event that they don't, which I think they will.
I think if we added more stringent buffer requirements that are already in the ordinance, I think that would really tend to
I don't believe that a
undermine-
four-season is more stringent, though.
Well,
And that's what I'm
I think
asking.
it's debatable.
Well, that's why I'm asking, what does the buffer ordinance state?
We're looking it up.
Thank you.
What other questions you have? Ms.
The other comment that I wanted to make was, again, and this is something that I would ask that you ask them to do, and that's something that Mrs. Smith brought up, that being the fact that they could do the buffer first, because when you're doing something of that magnitude, the amount of dust, noise, motion, everything else is very disruptive, and if they could put in the buffer first, I mean, it's not something extra that they would be asked to do, it's just a matter of reorganizing the order of when they do things.
Again, I think you would really bring that up with the planning board. I think if you tried to put it into this ordinance, it would probably be...
No, I'm not asking for it to be put in the ordinance. I think you made it clear that we can't do that, but I would like, if the mayor and the council could maybe put something in writing and ask them if they would, as a good neighbor, put in the buffer first and demonstrate good neighborliness.
Can I tell him you strenuously oppose, like Mr. Wissner?
I strenuously oppose, absolutely. Any word on the buffer there?
The specific language pertaining to a four-season buffer would apply to the commercial component, where that's required. At least that's what I just found, but I haven't read the whole thing.
So then, in other words, what kind of buffer would have to go along
The residential portion.
the residential portion?
Well, that provides, there's a number of options that are provided, so...
And with three-story something, that we're not quite sure what, going up next door, overlooking my swimming pool, you can't tell me any more about what kind of a buffer requirement we have in this town?
Mr. Jansky, is it a matter that you need just more time to get through the ordinance, Mr. Jansky? I mean, it's something you could...
Or the fact that the town can't enforce a more solid, I mean, what I'm hearing is that it's not a four-season buffer, that it's not going to provide the privacy that we would like, and that we, as, should have. not only
I
like,
just
but
think
we're
in
entitled
fairness,
to.
I think that's a pretty big ordinance book. I don't know that on the fly, we could ask Mr. Czerniecki to sort of go through that and be able to.
If you go on to the next one.
Yeah, why don't, if
Yeah,
you have another.
actually, that's it. That's it. I'm just very concerned about those two issues, and I would certainly wish that the council would address those and take a stand on it. And, and ask them, as I said, the buffer order is not a big deal. It's just reverse the order, put that in along the side. They're going to do everything off of Route 9 anyway, so it wouldn't interfere with their construction.
Does the council have a problem with us directing the manager in conjunction with the attorney to write a letter to the AST suggesting that in the event this ultimately is ratified, we do have some expectations of you in being a good neighbor. We got some comments from the general public. We would like you to agree right up front in writing to a 4-season buffer, which is not unreasonable. In fact, our ordinance probably will require it anyway. And in addition, we'd like for you to, from an orderly transition perspective, implement the buffers first and then carry out the rest of your project. And we'd appreciate your acknowledgement, so on and so forth. Contact your office. You can report back to us. Sure. We can let Mrs. Wisner know what the response of that letter is. I mean, does that seem reasonable?
Yes.
Everyone agree?
And we would not vote on this tonight, or we would?
Well, I think we have, my sense is I think we have to vote on it, because we couldn't even alter it if we wanted to unless we decided we weren't going to vote on it or voted it down. But I think in conjunction with whatever the outcome is, we send that letter.
Oh, wait a second. Just, two things. Well, with respect to the buffer issue, the engineer just confirmed for me that the 4-season buffer is only required for the commercial component to separate it from the residential. And there's a variety of other design options, and so we will write to them.
Okay.
But in fact, Mayor, what we will be recommending this evening with respect to this specific ordinance is that we carry the public hearing on this, because there's a few items that need to be worked out with the planning board still, vis-a-vis the settlement agreement.
So we're not going to vote on this tonight?
We would respectfully request that we not vote on it tonight.
Doesn't this need to be passed by us first?
You've already introduced it, so this is up for adoption this evening. Okay, so what we are doing is we're not going to have, by doing this, we don't have to go through the process of reintroducing, then sending it back to the planning board, and then having another public hearing. We just carry the public hearing to the next meeting.
And I'm confused, but that's not unusual. So.
Well, I'm confused, and that is a little bit unusual.
I'm sorry.
So why is it?
We have enough time to carry it to the next meeting, I think.
We do?
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, like, I understand the planning board did not agree, voted this down, if you will.
Right. It was a 4-3 vote.
It was a 4-3 vote, right? Which is irrelevant. I mean, it is what it is. But I think is that what you're talking about? Has posed some technical challenges to this mediation.
Right. Some additional information needed to be conveyed to the planning board, and by tabling this, it'll give us an opportunity to do that.
We'll get the conveyor going, okay?
I get the same question.
Because we need to address this, and I'd like to address Ms. Wisner's concerns and
right, and
some of the strenuous objections from Mr.
Based on Mrs. Dixell's problems, I mean, I'd love to ask for a privacy fence, but let's not push it.
Ooh.
So, I mean, yeah, I think a privacy fence would be wonderful.
You had to go there at
But
midnight.
if I'm not going to have a privacy fence, I at least want some privacy with a 4-season buffer. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for your
Mayor.
comments, Mrs. Dixell. Anyone else who'd like to be heard on this particular issue?
We need Mayor, I believe.
We do.
We need a motion.
No, I'm not making a motion to extend the meeting again. It's 5 after 12.
I will.
Well, you're not going to get
All right.
It's been
We need a motion to
22nd
carry
and
for another 15 minutes. Mrs. Dalton? You make the motion?
I make the motion.
Okay, we need a second. I will step down as chair, and I will second that motion. We have a motion and a second. Roll call on extending, at least so the people here can continue to be heard.
Mrs. Dalton? Yes, because if we're going to carry this to the next meeting, we need to know what the rest of the public has to say about it, and we need to know the answers to Mr. Wisner's questions, so we can communicate that to the planning board before our next meeting when we are going to vote on this. Yes.
By the way, Mr. Czerniecki did give several of the answers to Mr. Worcester's, I think, satisfaction.
Okay. Continue with the roll call, please.
Mr. Howell?
Mayor, before we vote on this, we have Mrs. Dixell sitting there. We're voting to extend this meeting for 15 minutes. We still have appointments to make.
No, we already.
We tabled them.
No, not the professional appointments. We didn't table those.
You are correct.
So we still have.
A couple minutes.
Yeah, so
I think we can do
I would vote yes with the stipulation that we carry the public portion on
We're going
this.
to do it.
So, with that stipulation, I'll vote yes for a 15-minute.
Okay?
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right. Mrs. Dixell, is there anything pertinent that you need to articulate tonight, knowing
I
we're
just
going to
wanted
be
to
carrying
add to
this?
Mrs. Wisner. I'm going to say with reference to your four-season, 50-foot buffer. And I'm going to just go back. The Lennar thing was remanded back to the planning board. We fought over it. We got a resolution. We got them to agree, but you know something? It's not there.
Mrs. Dixell, that is not
I'm just
pertinent to
saying,
this
it's
particular
not there.
ordinance. Okay.
It's bramble, it's dust, it's junk. It's not there. So I understand what she's saying. Get them to put it in writing, get something, see what you can agree on,
Great.
but there's no buffer.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the public actually, I'm going to ask a member of the council to please make a motion to carry this public hearing. Mr. Chernetsky, to what date? Okay, I'd ask a member of the council to make a motion to carry this public hearing, maintaining the fact that it has been appropriately advertised, we do not need to do so again, to April 10th.
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
We have a motion, we need a second. Hold on one second, we have a motion, we need a second to carry this.
Mayor, I would just ask you to hold that, because we just want to check the
Oh,
planning
all
board
right.
agenda really quick.
We're going to check the planning board agenda. For those individuals that have,
Planning board has a meeting on the 22nd, and I believe they don't have another meeting until...
this Thursday, I have it as master plan subcommittee.
Yeah.
That's not.
I told that to Mr. Peters.
okay, just for one, if you guys work on that as an aside, anyone that posed a question this evening, we will get technical answers well in advance of the meeting on April, whatever the date will be. Whether either Mr. Chernetsky or Mr. Bongiovanni will call people personally, probably within 24 to 48 hours, and give them any of the questions we were not able to answer tonight. So when can we carry this hearing until? What's the
It'd
date?
be the 24th, Mayor.
24th. Are we out of
Yeah.
time? I mean, before we
Well-
pick a date, I don't want to find out it's the 53rd day.
I think we are working in good faith by carrying it more so than if we act on it now.
Could we not carry it to, we have a meeting on April the 10th. Couldn't we carry it to April 10th? And then if we can extend it beyond then, we can open it and then extend it again thereafter, just so we're sure?
Yes, okay.
I mean,
Better plan.
Mr. Bongiovanni agreed? Okay, all right, so I'd ask the member of the council to make a motion to carry this until April the 10th.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to carry the public hearing until April 10. Any additional comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Just let the record reflect that the council has carried our public hearing on this particular ordinance to April 10th. We will take further public testimony at that time and may or may not continue to extend the hearing thereafter. I would like to call the council's attention to 10-1 and 10-2. I'd like to make a recommendation that we move these two items to a future meeting because of the lateness of the hour. Anyone disagree?
No, Mayor.
All right, I'd ask a member of the council to make a motion to table 10-1 and 10-2 to the manager to further get this rescheduled.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call to table.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. I want to remind the council, we need to make motions with respect to the appointment of a certified... Folks, I would just ask for your indulgence. We still have our meeting going on, please. I ask a member of the council to make a motion, please, with respect to the appointment of the certified tree expert. We'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I would make a motion that, using the revised contract structure, that Zig Panic be reappointed as a certified tree expert for the township.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks with respect to the appointment? Thank you, Mr.
Pardon me,
Bongiovanni.
Mayor, I need to amend my motion, make it effective Thursday, March 22nd.
Okay. Ms. Dalton, are you okay with the amended motion?
Yes, I am.
Under remarks, just please let the record reflect that the Township Council has appropriately pointed out to us that there certainly would be a conflict in Mr. Panic serving on the Shade Tree Commission and also being the Shade Tree expert. So we're going to ask that the clerk's office contact Mr. Panic tomorrow, make him aware of the need for his...
Tomorrow's today, Mayor.
Tomorrow is today. Later this morning, to please contact Mr. Panic and make him aware we do need his written resignation from Shade Tree, and then obviously his appointment takes effect tomorrow.
It's today.
Yes. Thereafter, with respect to the position. Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, the council also talked about appointing a range of, or an approved list, if you will, of appraisers to assist the municipality in farmland preservation, appraisals, and other appraising activities. Ask a member of the council to please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this was the first year that we solicited requests for qualifications for the position of appraisal services, and that's for real estate appraisal professionals to assist the township in considering acquiring land, valuing things. And we received 5 very well qualified proposals, and rather than pick one, we have discussed naming all 5 of them as eligible appraisers, so that the manager can then have the ability to contact them and negotiate for better prices rather than sticking with one for the year and being locked into a particular rate or range. Having said that, I would like to move that the following 5 appraisal service companies be approved as the list of eligible appraisal services companies from which the manager may select for positions, for projects as necessary. And they are Johnson Realty Services of Seagirt, J.L. Guyer, G-U-Y-E-R, of Tinton Falls, Martin Appraisal Associates of Lawrenceville, Stewart Appraisal Company of Freehold, and James P. Casey Appraisal Associates, LLC, also of Seagirt.
Okay, we have a motion, we need a second.
I'll second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. And then finally, earlier this evening, the deputy mayor made a recommendation that we arrange a time to have a public meeting and hearing on the status of the township's 208 plan. And I made a note here to remind you, Mr. Chinesky, at the end of the meeting, we need to pick a date and time. We probably, my suspicion is we'd get a fairly good turnout. We probably want to have a larger facility to accommodate that meeting, maybe one of the schools. The deputy mayor has a great idea. I think that we should try and schedule that, have a public hearing, let people come out. We can have maybe someone give an overview of what the plan currently includes and doesn't include, and then individuals who may be interested could attend, ask their questions, give us their comments and feedback. Can you work with the clerk to get a date that meets the council's scheduling requirements?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other comments on that particular issue? Everyone's still in agreement? Okay. And what else, Ms. Woolman?
Ordinance introductions.
Ordinance introductions. Why did I miss ordinance introductions? Ordinance introductions. Okay, we have a few items to be introduced. This includes Articles 9A 1, 2, and 3. I'd ask a member of the council to please proceed with 9A 1.
Now, Mayor, there is 982 is off.
I'm sorry.
The R1 ordinance is off, but we're doing the bond ordinance for the ambulance.
You are correct. This is the add-on. So we have 9A1 and the add-on for the bond. So we can begin with 9A1.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-10 on first reading by title, and to order that same be published in full in the 3/23/07 issue of the Asbury Park Press,
together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will further be considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on April 24th, 2007, at 7:30 PM prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second, please.
Second.
Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 Land Use to establish the HD3 zoning district and to provide standards for development of age-restricted housing development within a mixed-use setting as recommended by the Master Plan Reexamination Report.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, the next item, please. It would be 9A3, I'm sorry.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-14 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the March 23rd, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on April 24th, 2007 at 7:30 PM prevailing time in the municipal building.
Okay, we have a motion, we need a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Woolman, would you read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 Land Use to make various modifications to the Township zoning map by the Master Plan Reexamination Report.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9A4, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-16 on first reading by title and to order that same be published in full in the 3/2307 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 4/24/07 at 7:30 PM prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second, please.
Second, Mayor.
A motion and a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
Capital Ordinance supplementing Ordinance Number 0-99-17, finally adopted on May 17, 1999, which provided for construction and improvements to buildings in order to appropriate an additional $20,000, therefore for a total appropriation of $196,125, and to expand the scope of improvements to include the acquisition of an ambulance, authorized in and by the Township of Howell in the County of Monmouth, New Jersey.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, just to call the public's attention and the council's attention, we have our workshop meeting on Tuesday, April the 10th, executive session at 6:30, regular session between 7:30 and 8 p.m. Our regular meeting is then Tuesday, April 24th, executive session at 6:30. Expect to begin public between 7:30 and 8 p.m. Any other business, Mr. Czerniecki? Ms. Woolman, you have something? Okay, Mr. Czerniecki, what else?
No, Mayor, I just want to point out that with respect to the master plan, we've now done the design standards, and we've now done the ARE ordinance. I just want to point out to council that those are two very major components of the master plan. One is to help direct what the built environment is going to look like, and the second is to leverage market forces to preserve what's worth preserving.
Absolutely.
So those are two milestones, and we have a long way to go, but I think we're making good progress.
Thank you, Mr. Czerniecki. Ms. Woolman, you have something?
I just wanted to confirm that you're going to have the budget meeting on Wednesday, April 11th at 6:30?
I'm sorry, I must have overlooked it. I believe, I didn't see it on the agenda.
I didn't put it on the agenda, I didn't get confirmation from the entire council.
Well, let me check. Is everyone else available that night?
I'll say no to anything at this time of night.
April 11th. Provided I don't have a Little League game, I can be here.
Opening day should be the 14th for you, man.
Well, we got practice.
Yeah.
Got practice. I got a rough team. All right, it would appear that that's fine. Is everyone, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I think I have a conflict.
You have a
that night.
conflict? Okay. I think if Ms. Dalton can't be here, why don't you recircle back and see what he can come up with? I mean, we weren't, well, I don't know about Mrs. Showmaker this evening, but hopefully all five of us can be here. So it doesn't look like that's a date as of right now. Okay, any other business? Hearing none, motion to adjourn. Oh,
I
I'm
just
sorry.
want to remind everyone that Echo Lake Park, March 31st, there is an Easter egg hunt and activities for the kids from 9 to noon. And since we won't have a meeting before the 10th, to wish everyone a happy Easter and Passover.
Agreed, for sure. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Good morning, everyone.